Good morning, everyone. In the interest of keeping us on schedule, I know there's a lot of things you would rather do this Saturday morning, but I really appreciate you all being here. Christine Wellers is on her way, but she asked us to start without her, so we're going to get going. First, I just want to welcome everyone here and thank you very much for coming. I think this is a good opportunity. It's something we've never done before, to get all the people and city leaders in a room together to talk about each other and what our goals and objectives are, and then try to find some ways that we can continue to work forward to address the issues and needs of the city of Latrobe and to continue to move us forward on a path of revitalization and fiscal responsibility and all those kind of things. So I'm going to ask that we go around the room and introduce ourselves to each other, and then we'll get off on the agenda. You all have a copy of the agenda. The times in there are just, guidelines. If we get into a topic that takes a little longer, that's fine. If we get done with the topic sooner, then we'll just keep moving on, and maybe we'll get out of here sooner. So thank you all very much. Wayne, you want to start?
Wayne Jones, City Manager.
Mike Gray, Public Works Director.
Holly Piedmont, City Secretary.
Pam Powell, Code Enforcement.
Sue Maines, I represent the Parks and Rec, and I'm also on the school board.
I'm Chad Ruffner, Huntsville.
Jim Kelly, Council.
Robert Forsh, City Council.
Jack Murtha, City Council.
Jerry Baldineri, City Council.
Rosie Wolford, Mayor.
Craig Shevchik, Recreation Director.
Chuck Mason, I'm here for the Latrobe Foundation.
Jim O'Connect, Pledge Master.
Pledge Master.
Jim Wright.
Jared Trunzo, Executive Director of the Revitalization.
Linda Box with the Catherine Mavis McKenna Foundation.
Bill Box, Bill McKenna Foundation.
Okay. So let's just get started with our foundation presentations and discussions. Bill, go first.
First, I'll state the obvious that we're all separate, independent, private foundations. We have our own missions and our own interests. We sometimes collaborate on common interests. But you have the handout. I think everybody, I'm basically going to go through this. The Phil McKenna Foundation was founded by its namesake in 1967. A little bit about Philip. He was the founder of Kennametal, which was established in Latrobe in 1938, and I think we all know that. Kennametal became a global leader in the tungsten carbide machine tool industry. Philip was internationally known, an internationally known metallurgist and industrialist, and the inventor of the first commercially successful steel cutting grade of tungsten carbide. That was the basis of his patent for Kennametal. He was also a renowned advocate of sound monetary and economic policy and limited constitutional government. Besides his business, those were his primary interests in life. And he worked with many of the leading political and intellectual leaders of his day. He was really quite an intellectual. The mission of the foundation follows his interests. We don't feel empowered to do just whatever we want to with his money. We're stewards of his legacy, stewards of his interests, and that's what we follow. We're guided by, in that vein, we're guided by the philosophical orientation and public life of Philip. And we work primarily in the fields of public policy and education, academic affairs. And as I mentioned to Rosie, local projects are really a small part of what we do. We're glad to help out, but it's not our major focus. Our primary purpose is to support the advancement of American civic principles, private enterprise, and intellectual and educational heritage of Western civilization. I always tell people we're in the ideas and issues business. That's what we primarily do. We're also interested in assisting the enhancement of the quality of life and development of our home community. We're located here. Bill founded his company here, the source of the wealth, and so we do feel an obligation to help out, but it's a limited minor part of what we do. As I said, we're a private foundation. We're organized as a nonprofit charitable corporation governed by a board of directors. Founding chairman was Alex McKenna, Philip's cousin and primary business partner, and his father, who led the foundation for nearly 30 years. And I succeeded him as chairman in 1995. All grants are approved by the board of directors. I will make recommendations, we all make recommendations, but the board of directors approves all grants. Requests for funding should be addressed to me and should include descriptions of the organization and the specific request, project, or what have you. We require a budget, revenue, and expense statements. And there are other requests that we like to have attached, but those can be found in our official guidelines, which is available by request. We only support nonprofit organizations that are certified by the IRS under 501c3 of the IRS code. A large portion of our grants go to annually recurring organizations. In other words, we support a lot of organizations year after year after year, and so there's very little flexibility for new or special projects, but there is some. And most of what we support would be called think tanks, public policy organizations in Washington and elsewhere in the country, Harrisburg, and so forth. Some Latrobe area grants. We helped establish the Alex G. McKenna School of Business, Economics, and Government at St. Vincent College, along with our sister foundation. And we also helped found the Center for Political and Economic Thought at St. Vincent College. They do a lot of lectures and conferences. A lot of what you see along those lines at St. Vincent are under the auspices of the center. I was the co-founder of that and serve as a senior fellow. And so it's one of the things I'm most active personally involved in. In recent years, we've given support to the Community Revitalization Program and the Parks and Rec program. We helped start the Latrobe St. Vincent Trail project, which is ongoing and progress is being made. Linda's leading that effort. We also have occasionally supported projects through the Latrobe Foundation. Some things of benefit to the Latrobe area, not directly in Latrobe, but projects like the Carnegie Science Center. They have a program for elementary schools in Westmoreland County. We support that program for schools in this part of the county. The Junior Achievement K-12 programs in schools here, we support that. And Pennsylvania Free Enterprise, it's a business simulation program at Lycoming College and Penn Tech for high school students. So some of you may have heard that. Those are our bigger projects. We've supported other projects in Latrobe over the years, but that's kind of a sample. We don't have a specific budget for Latrobe. As I say, it's a small part, but assuming that we continue these other programs that we've mentioned, which is likely, we would have an opportunity to consider maybe a couple of other special projects or organizations at relatively modest levels, by which I mean 10 to 20,000 here and there, something like that. That's who we are and what we do.
Does anyone have any questions for Bill? I do. I'm just curious, is there a geographical region that you serve? Or is it all of Pennsylvania, West, or just, this region?
Well, locally, it's the Latrobe area. Okay, so however broadly you want to consider that. Our main emphasis is public policy, academic affairs, public affairs. That's nationally. So we have just some examples. In Washington, D.C., we support the American Enterprise Institute, the Ethics and Public Policy Center, Capital Research Center. Further abroad, we support the Claremont Institute, which is in California, and the Pacific Research Institute, also in California. Those organizations that were initially associated with Donald McKenna Phillips' brother. In years past, I'm sorry? Yeah. In the early years, we gave very heavy support to Claremont McKenna College, originally Claremont Men's College. That was founded principally by Donald McKenna, Phillips' brother, and we supported that, and we spent a lot of our assets on that early on, but we haven't in recent years. And that's a nationally ranked liberal arts college. I haven't looked recently, but I'll say it's in the top 15 of.
Where is it?
It's in Claremont, California.
Claremont, California.
Near Los Angeles.
I had no idea you were that broad.
Yeah. So those are the things. Intercollegiate Studies Institute is in Wilmington, Delaware. That's a big grantee of ours. The Commonwealth Foundation in Harrisburg is a state think tank. My father-in-law, Linda's father, was the principal founder of that. I've been on the board for many years. But stepped off recently. That's another big grantee of ours. So that's kind of our.
It's impressive. I had no idea you reached out that far. That's interesting.
Well, we follow Philip's interests.
Mm-hmm.
He had those kind of interests, and we carry that on.
It's funny reading this, the PFEW, the Pennsylvania Free Enterprise Week. I lived in Williamsport when I was in high school. I lived in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So like Common College was the big, it was like our St. Vincent. So I didn't even know Latrobe existed or your foundation, and I went to PFEW,
oh, did you?
which served the basis for me going into business.
Oh, great.
Which is just sort of funny, knowing that you back that program.
All roads lead back to Latrobe.
Well, I get a lot of letters from students that attend Free Enterprise Week, and it's like, church camp, life-changing for a lot of these kids. It really is. And it's a very interesting program. It's not an ideological program. It's a hands-on business program. So you have students that, from a computer simulation, they get up, they organize in companies, and they go through everything that a business does, budgeting, finance, production, marketing. And they compete against each other. And they love it. It's just we support 30 students, Latrobe High School, Derry, Ligonier, Greensburg, including Greensburg Catholic Central. That's this part of the county schools.
It's really interesting. Sue, are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm. I talk to a lot of students who have attended and loved it.
I don't want to speak for Bill, but so a grant would go to the Pennsylvania for Free Enterprise, or so that's based in Erie. But those dollars come back home for scholarships for Latrobe, Greater Latrobe students. And again, the importance of what Philip and Alex McKenna did from this community to initiate the Commonwealth Foundation, Pennsylvania for Free Enterprise, that was initiated here. So those leaders, those forward-thinking people, that their mission and their objectives are still in the forefront today. And again, bringing it back to Orange and Black, bringing it back to Latrobe, how that was all initiated. So I don't mean to speak for you.
No,
I think it's impressive. I think it's really impressive.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
I think we don't realize, I think we just don't know the things that have started here and how they've grown, and so I really appreciate that. That's interesting.
another little comment. I was with a gentleman who was in the landscaping business, and his daughter talked about going to the Pennsylvania Free Enterprise from Latrobe, and he said, I went there. So his father went, and all the students went, and they're both Latrobe graduates.
How long has that been in existence, do you know?
Well, I
At
think
least
it started,
30 years.
Yeah, I think it started in the 80s. Yeah.
It's really cool.
Anything else for Bill? Any other questions for Bill? Okay. Linda?
All right. Well, I wanted Bill to go first to set the stage about who Philip was. Catherine Mavis Smith McKenna was his wife, his second wife. Kay was married to Donald Manell Smith, who died, unfortunately. He was the president of McKee Glass and Jeanette, and they built their home on what was Salem Road at that time. Now it's Old Salem Road. And it is now the McKenna Senior Center in Greensburg. But Kay was a very active, dynamic personality. She was involved in many, many civic interests. She was a much more worldly person than living in the RDs of Greensburg, and so she would spend a lot of time in Pittsburgh and had a lot of great close associates, and really contributed to a lot of the cultural life in Pittsburgh and brought those things back to her home, now home, of Westmoreland County. Her only son, so she was left a widow with a young son, and then her son Manal died in the early 60s. And working through that grief of losing her only child, she created a charitable foundation in her son's memory, and named it originally the Catherine and Manel Smith Charitable Trust, which then became the Catherine Mavis McKenna Foundation. But as a result of sort of working through that grieving process, the first thing she did was build a building to his memory, and that's the Greensburg Garden and Civic Center. And so that's one of our, and again, as Bill said, we follow the donor's intent. And so the first grant we make every year is to, whatever might be needed at the Greensburg Garden and Civic Center, because that was, Kay designed that building and dedicated it in her son's honor and memory. So, as you can see, she was interested in many things, but a real passion of hers was Japanese flower arranging, ikebana and ikenova. And we had this fabulous collection of these bronze containers. I have no idea what we're going to do with them. But they're fabulous. And she traveled to Japan many times, and she actually arranged for the head of Phipps Conservatory, Frank Curto at the time, to travel to Japan and help lay out the Japanese room at Phipps Conservatory. And Phipps Conservatory is one of our, legacy grantees that we assist with every year. So the mission of our foundation, really, again, we are trustees of her legacy, and she was interested in many organizations in Pittsburgh. She was interested in flower arranging, which became garden clubs, which became more community citizen organizations like our Latrobe Flower Garden, gardens here. But she was interested in public recreation. She thought physical fitness was very important. She thought education was very important. She was early, I think, one of the founding members of the Westmoreland Symphony Orchestra. So she had a broad range of interests, and we've sort of distilled it over time really to mean she's trying to enhance the quality of community life, and not just in Latrobe, but basically in Westmoreland County, and more the eastern side of Westmoreland County than the whole county. The governance, two foundations were set up in parallel really, and we're governed by a board of trustees. I became chairman of the board when my father died in 1995. Requests are made, we receive requests, but we also are proactive. If we see Jared needs something, we might tap it on the shoulder and say, like, hey, can we help you with some endeavor? And we do that with a lot of our organizations that we have, close working relationships with. So, we give, most of our grants are given in Western Pennsylvania. We have a few interests outside of Western Pennsylvania, but very few. Most of ours are very regional. Allegheny County, Westmoreland County primarily, but we'll give to a touching county for a particular, special project, but not necessarily routinely. So projects funded in Latrobe, as you all know, we helped with the street lighting here, support for the Latrobe Arts Center, support St. Vincent College for, forever. We helped the Latrobe Historical Society with their new headquarters. Bill mentioned the Latrobe St. Vincent Trail, which is coming along. Thank you to your brother for his help on that. Our foundation, it was really my, cutting my teeth on trail building was the Creekside Trail here in Latrobe. A wonderful experience for me, it really was. We've helped Park and Rec through the ages with various things, capital projects, support to the Greater Latrobe School District Foundation, again, scholarship money primarily, and support for many community projects through the Latrobe Foundation. And I have a list I can pass out of, just from 2007 to 17, different grants that we've made to the Latrobe Foundation, which, Chuck will talk about a little bit. So, any questions to me? My foundation's way funner.
Do you have separate boards of
Oh,
directors?
yes. Yes.
Okay. And
There's one overlapping member, though.
Oh, I see.
My sister Zana serves on both boards.
I see. I have some questions, but I think it's for everybody, so I'll wait until everybody does their presentation.
I'm going to be talking on the radio about Latrobe here in about a week. If I mention the project that you mind to, do you mind if I mention your foundation, or would you rather not?
Well, in what context?
So, basically on the streetlights. Your
Oh,
donation.
yeah, that's public information.
I just didn't know, sometimes
Yeah.
foundations don't particularly appreciate the additional exposure.
Yeah, I would not, I'd appreciate not mentioning an amount,
Okay.
if that's
No, that's fine,
possible.
that's fine, I appreciate that. I wanted to ask you.
Sure, thanks. Appreciate that.
Any specific questions for Linda?
I didn't mention that we supported Delphi Village. I didn't say everything we supported.
It's a long list.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here again. Linda sort of glossed over the fact she cut her teeth on the Creekside Trail down here. Harold Dykert, 3 predecessors to Craig, when he was retiring, and that's before all the Lawhana Watershed Association's work with the creek, he said, don't turn your back on Lawhana Creek. And if you've noticed, I see from my window the eagles flying the creek. There's a blue heron that sits on the curve here, and I've been at it for 45 years, and this is just recent. So Linda didn't turn her back on the creek and created the Creekside Trail. We were teasing her, saying, what the hell, are you going to take that all the way to Washington, D.C.? But guess what? The Great Allegheny Passage goes from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. It was her funding, it was creativity, her forward thinking, the spirit of the McKenna Foundations that carried that. And then it's back to Latrobe. So as all these people throughout eastern Pennsylvania, probably coming from around the world, to use that, that it's here in Latrobe, and it's these foundations that created it. So I think we can all be proud.
How's the St. Vincent Trail coming?
Coming along. We have a quarter-mile built from Devereaux Drive to Monastery Run. We have the steel over Monastery Run now.
I ran across it.
Okay.
Oh, you're supposed to.
Everybody
I know, they're going to flip that.
Are you tore down the flag?
No.
Took that camera.
Yeah.
Make sure that's on.
My cousin made me do it.
But we're actually have a contract with someone to clear and grub the second quarter mile, and that's underway. It's sort of weather dependent. And we hope to get the bridge built. Again, Malcolm Sias has offered Westmoreland County maintenance staff, I guess, are going to build the building inside, and then we'll bring it in on cranes, drop it in, and then we need volunteers to help deck and put the railing up, so I'll have all your email addresses the first time I list that.
Do you know Lester Sutton?
Uh-huh.
He's a good guy, too.
Yes.
He's on our board.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, but there's no timetable for it. It's just sort of as we can move it, we do. Any other questions?
Jim?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It's great to be with everybody. You've got the handout for the foundation. Again, a little bit of history. It's a private foundation established in 1953. I might point out that that's when foundations were at infancy. They were just being established, and James H. and Nancy McFeely Rogers established the McFeely Rogers Foundation. Jim Rogers was a machinist. He married the boss's daughter, Nancy McFeely. At that time, if some of you remember, back in Latrobe, there's McFeely Brick Company. They had several silica brick companies throughout western Pennsylvania. Back when the furnaces in the steel industry would heat up, it was lined with brick, and that's what they provided. Mr. Rogers, James H. Rogers, became owner of Latrobe Die Casting, Riverside Tool and Die. Expanded that business. He was also active in a number of business ventures throughout Latrobe. Mr. and Mrs. Rogers were most active in the civic and charitable areas of the community until Mr. Rogers' death in 1970 and her death in 1981. The mission is to identify and demonstrate principles which in application strengthen and enrich the quality of life for individuals, families in this community, especially Latrobe, making Latrobe a better place. And this goes back to the mission statements that they had, providing opportunities for individuals and families, partnership with the community, because we're doing here today, effective functioning of our community systems, and of course try to provide some leadership. As with the other two foundations, McFeely Rogers Foundation is a private foundation, non-governmental, non-profit organization that funds programs with funds and programs managed, again, by a board of trustees. It's not me, it's the board. The past presidents have been, again, James H. Rogers, and upon his death, Nancy McFeely Rogers, then Fred M. Rogers, and now his sister, Nancy Rogers Crozier. And again, we have 8 trustees on the board. Funding requests, this is what we ask of anyone seeking grants. There's grant application guidelines, short letter proposal, specific needs objectives, detailed estimated budget, qualifications of the individual institutions, proof, again, of tax exempt status. You've got to be a 501c3. And we don't give grants to individuals. We might talk about scholarships, but those scholarships are given to the institutions. The institutions make those determinations who is qualified for those. We don't want to get the calls, hey, my daughter is going to, or my son wants to. We don't get into that. It's up to the institution to do that. And again, we mostly support the Latrobe area. We'll get to the projects in the back. But again, in summary, Jim and Nancy Rogers felt Latrobe in a very good place. It was very good to them, and they in turn established the foundation, which, with its finite resources, there's only so much money to work with to make Latrobe the community a special place as much as possible as we can to live, work, play, and learn. So on the second page are some grants that we have made. I think it's interesting to go back to 1953 when it was founded. The first total grants were $250.
Big money.
The Latrobe Foundation, and Chuck will mention these. The pool, I might point out that, and Chuck will have a picture of this, in the middle 50s. We used to swim in Lahanna Creek, Patty's Hole. And one early summer day, a storm came up, as we've seen here, in the creek turned to sort of like a milky, like a tea, if you put tea in your coffee, or milk in your coffee or tea. And, a young Camel boy drowned. And she said, Latrobe's better than this. So in the late 50s, finishing in 1958 and opening in 1958, the Rogers McFeely Pool was open. She felt that, and Jim Rogers felt that everyone that wants to swim should be able to swim and swim safely. So that's when that was established. We support the annual playgrounds on an updated basis annually. Rogers Park across with the fountain. Since its inception, all capital improvements and maintenance are assumed by the McFeely Rogers Foundation through the Latrobe Foundation. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Senior Computer Associates or not. It was started by Mickey Radman. Now it's David Maruco and Sam Lawson. Probably some of us have in math. He had that class. They teach people that don't have the skills. It was computers at one time, and they refurbished computers to give to older people so they can communicate with the grandkids. Now that's evolved into smartphones and laptops. And that takes place at the Senior Citizens Center. As Memorial Library, the bookmobile and the children's library needs, the Art Center general operating support and creative programming initiatives. And as we know, the Art Center is more than an art center. It's sort of like the economic engine on the corner, and continues to promote the downtown. Parks and Rec, we've been partners with Park and Rec since inception, with the Concert and Park series, DCNR projects, and general operating costs. Presbyterian Church, we're very instrumental in historic Unity Chapel. It's where Unity Cemetery is. I'm whether familiar with that. It's the first Presbyterian church east of the Alleghenies. I guess west of the Alleghenies. West. If you haven't been out there, it'd be great to take a look at that. And the neighborhood revitalization, which was we knew it was the Second Word School, became the administration building and sat idle. We were very much part of that, not only for the prayer garden for the church, but revitalizing that block. Historical Society, its new offices and general operating support, Salvation Army Red Cross general support, senior citizen program equipment. And again, they make noodles out there, and it's a fundraiser, and they're very good. We were approached and said, our machine is broken, what can we do? I said, well, how can we help? So for $210, they got a new noodle machine. So when you talk about large grants and everything, we try to drill down to be aware of what the needs are and try to get the biggest bang for the buck, and they're really happy with their new noodle machine. Latrobe Area Hospital, we were instrumental in providing state-of-the-art digital mammography. As you know, that evolved to that, and we were part of that whole operation. And there's a nice, quaint chapel over there. If you've ever seen that, that was built and continues to be maintained by the foundation. Community revitalization, we're very instrumental in that. Not only active with grants, but active with time and hopefully some leadership. City of Latrobe, our Safe Routes to School project, we provided funding for the sound system here, of course the K-9 fund, and the school resource officer funding. Fred Rogers Center, we do the archival work. As you know, the Fred Rogers Center, located in Latrobe, which we feel very proud of, being at St. Vincent College. They continue to find different memorabilia of Fred, and continues to be archived, and we feel over time that will be where the emphasis will be as people continue to research on Fred's good works. The chamber, as you know, the chamber almost went dark once and then twice. We were very much part of that revitalization and sustainability effort. Westmoreland County Community College Educational Foundation, again, that's all over the county. Our emphasis is we want to support Latrobe students in scholarships there. Again, we don't give those individual scholarships. It goes to the foundation, and they seek people from Latrobe area to do that. Trail Latrobe Partners in Education. We're very proud of our school system. We support it. We feel that people can live anywhere in Western Pennsylvania, but if you've got good schools, they'll want to locate here, build their homes here, raise their kids here. 3 elementary school cultural enrichment programs. We provide funding for each of those 3 elementary schools across the board, matched by the PTOs, and programs come into the schools. We provide for artists and performing artists residency programs, student scholarships, professional artists. Example of that is when the professional artists come from all the United States to the Art Center, we provide scholarships as many as 3 or 4. They're chosen by the art leadership. Those students come to the Art Center and participate in sometimes 3 or 4 day. An example of that, there was a Sainer girl that was a senior, didn't know what she wanted to do going to college. She took a class that was knife painting, and we provide the supplies for them through the school. Make it short, she took the class, she decided to maybe visit an art school in the Philadelphia area. She took her portfolio, laid it out, and the admissions person said, "Why the hell did you do this?" And she told them. She's now gone on after 4 undergraduate levels. She's out on the East Coast working in the art field. She didn't know what she wanted to do. That one little thing sparked her to carry on with her career. Pennsylvania Free Enterprise, we support, as Bill does. We really value that, and we value what Philip McKenna has done to initiate that. Summer Science and Math Engineering, we provide 8 scholarships for junior high, rising 8 to 9-year-olds. They spend the week at UPG to test out the STEM program. This is the 10th year, initiated by the McFeely Rogers Foundation. On a little side, went over there, they talked, and I said, "Well, who are the students going to be?" "Well, we're going to Greensburg." They said, "Well, we're going to start with Hempfield and Greensburg." I said, "You're not getting any more one." So we were the first. There were 10 students at that point. It's after the 10th year. What they're doing now is after this decade, they're bringing those students back to see, are they still interested in STEM? Are they still in those kind of areas for their livelihood? So that's going to be interesting. I can follow up with you on that if you'd like. Learning support and cultural enrichment initiatives. That's through the school system. And on a little aside, the special needs teachers, we had a meeting with them. Some of this stuff, it's heavy. We provided a bus to take them into Pittsburgh for some cultural enrichment. 2 students couldn't figure out why you had to stop and get a ticket to get on a road. These are senior high kids. They're senior high kids. Also, at that point in time, this goes back, we're probably doing this 15 years, maybe 20. They would come to school hungry. We provided the cereals and the breakfast in the back of the room. Now that's provided through another program. But again, you just don't know. And that's not a large grant. It's probably $1,750 a year. But the impact it has on these students is it's a game changer. So there you go.
Questions for Jeff?
Now, Jim, are these just the highlights, or did you run out of paper? Because as you're going through that, I know that I've been involved with 7 or 8 more that should be on there. So were these just recent, or these ongoing?
These are probably, as within probably the last 10 to 15 years, I picked those out. But a lot of these are ongoing, but since 1953, again, 65 years of this. But it all comes back here. But I just highlighted some of the ones that I thought might be of interest in a broad spectrum, cross-section of the community.
Okay.
I'm going to pass out some pictures. I have them tabbed. There is one of Patty's Hole that he had mentioned, one of Levy Keener Park in 1959, and the rest are original pictures of what Levy Keener Park looked like before the foundation started developing. Unlike the last foundations that were private, the Latrobe Foundation is a public foundation. And we really have no money or no endowment, which is why I'm nice to Jim and Bill. One of the biggest differences between the public foundation and the private foundations is we're allowed to hold non-income producing property. which, so we own various parcels of land around here, including Legion Keener. We have Dairy Teener League, which we act as a pass-through. They do all of their own programming, but because we're a 501c3 that can hold non-income-producing property, we do, and donations can be given to us, and we can pass it on to Dairy Teener League, and they're tax deductible. We also have the trail along Lincoln Avenue, which we purchased from the Norfolk Southern Railway, and which has been developed. Now we are in the preliminary stages of planning the additional trail from Hillview Avenue the whole way out to Raymond Street Extension. We own that. And we're working with the municipal authority now. They're going to bring a new line in using that right of way, which will help us in the development of the furtherance of the trail.
Chuck, that might be a good example of how the Latrobe Foundation works. So when the Norfolk Southern abandonment, happened, a bunch of us were saying, boy, what a great opportunity. So it was our foundation that gave money to the Latrobe Foundation for the initial surveys, and then when we were able to rail bank the line, our foundation gave money again to the Latrobe Foundation, so the Latrobe Foundation through Chuck could acquire the corridor from the Norfolk Southern. But there wasn't like this magic pots of money that Chuck had. It was like, it was deemed an important community project, and it just happened. Usually it's any of us, but that was one that our foundation was instrumental in helping with.
It's interesting because that's something I really never understood how this all worked, So, I think it's very helpful to understand that.
Yeah, and we do cooperate and work together, and different people come up with ideas. Even individual citizens, like the Mini Gardens, which is one of our funds maintain. John Wondrisco was the in charge of international sales for Latrobe Steel Company, and he admired these different gardens that they had in European cities. And he came back and thought, well, that would be a good idea. And he started that was his idea. And he's created a monster. It has really, it's a wonderful program, but it is a big thing. We've gone around and we beg, borrow, steal from different people. We still own a truck. We do. We bought a truck just for somebody to go around and water it. So that's one of them. Different people come to us with ideas, and if we think it's a good idea, we discuss it among the executive committee, and we take it to our board, and we adopt it as a program. The Latrobe St. Vincent Trail, that's down there. That's really not our program. We're just acting as a pass-through for Allegheny Trail Passing.
Well, the Regional Trail Corporation.
Regional Trail Corporation. I knew it was one of those. We act in those purposes. We sort of go back and forth. Whichever one of us can do it, then we do it, whether we do it as a private foundation or we do it as a public foundation. That's pretty much what we do. We have a lot of different projects. We have a significant amount of, Linda had said she started the Creekside Trail. It was her idea for the Creekside Trail, and we've developed that. We also...
It's actually Bill Dzonbach's idea. He came to me and said, let's go, here's a trail that you should be building.
So, you build it.
Yeah.
It's probably underwater now.
Yeah.
We also work with different people in using our land. The Loyalhanna Watershed Association put in a place down by Murphy's Bridge with access to the creek. That goes over our property. We also cooperated with Latrobe Steel, now Carpenter. Our lands sort of all come together there at that. The Western Pennsylvania Conservancy gave us 30 acres of ground back behind Fox and James and along the Loyalhanna Creek, which can be used for hunting. We cooperated with the Game Commission for them to supervise that area. So anybody comes up with an idea, bring it to us, and we try to fit it into our program. Anything that's for the betterment of Latrobe and the greater Latrobe area.
I mean, Chuck, I didn't count them, but there might be 25 or 30 specialized funds.
Yeah, we have unrestricted funds, which don't amount to much, and then we have the restricted funds, and these are just a small portion of it. You're right. There's probably 25 or 30.
I mean, we've had a couple scholarship funds, memorial contributions. People wanted to do certain things. I mean,
Tennis courts.
the statue.
Oh, the Arnold Palmer statue, the Fred Rogers statue. That park is owned by the Latrobe Foundation, and the electric bill and everything is paid for by the Latrobe Foundation. To keep that up with obvious help from the McField Rogers Foundation. But those are the types of things that we do. Anything in the community that is helpful.
It's really efficient because instead of everybody trying to get their own 501c3 tax-exempt status for a limited kind of project, you know, if it's worthy and has, you know, a constituency behind it, you know, and then a person or a group can come to the Latrobe Foundation and say, like, we want to buy a tractor for Little League, but Little League's on 501c3, so we can't get funding from the foundations. But if you set up a fund with the Latrobe Foundation, then we can give to a qualified C3 organization. And then they can have, the Latrobe Foundation can pass it to Little League or whomever.
The community chorus is one. You've seen mostly senior citizens, there's a community chorus, and people want to make donations, get a charitable deduction, so we fund the community chorus. The Rotary backpack program for the food. Rotary is not an entity of which private foundation or individuals can take the donation. Jerry Supko came to the Latrobe Foundation. There's a fund; those funds come in. The Latrobe Foundation then get filtered back to backpack. So, again, and this point is well taken. Should Rotary establish another entity for exempt purposes? No. We just have to run a little faster, a little harder, and take care of it.
Little operating expenses.
We have very few operating expenses.
It's all volunteer.
It is. Nobody gets paid. We have no employees. We use our individual staffs to handle correspondence or any clerical work that has to be done. We pay for our own postage. The only administrative expenses we have is purchasing insurance for the buildings at the pool and in Legion Keep.
And our annual audit.
And our annual audit, which we have to go through.
So do the three of you sit on the Latrobe Foundation board?
I do.
You do?
Bill does.
Bill doesn't. Okay, Linda and Jim.
Linda and Jim are on
And there's a
the board.
25-member board.
Oh,
or so.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're on the executive
I see.
officers, which causes confusion.
I think maybe.
How many acres roughly to use? It's some, I'm
I knew we should have brought that map.
Roughly.
Yeah, I took that. Creekside has 200. I don't
So
know.
we probably have close to 300.
Well, just like Latrobe, you have 101 acres. That's just in Latrobe, like our city. But I don't know.
Yeah, and then, but we go the whole way out
Yeah,
the
you-
creek.
Yeah, I
Almost
I
to
didn't count all that.
Kingston.
Just here, we have 101.
And I don't know whether it's in the city or not, but we've got that 9 acres behind Mr. B's.
Well, yeah, that is.
That's in the city.
Is that in the city?
Yeah, like bypassing.
Yeah. So anybody have any questions? I just have some questions that before we get on to Jared and Craig, I want to just ask the foundations, based on your varied experience and your history, what do you see as some of the challenges, immediate challenges that Latrobe faces? And then also, I'd like to ask how you think we can better work together with the City Council and the foundation. Do you have any ideas along those lines?
Well, I'll start it. I think it's important for the city to look good. Because that attracts people who want to come here, to live here, possibly development. So I think it's important that property owners are required to keep up their property. The houses have to look decent, don't junk up the yards, keep the house painted. So those kind of residential things, I hope the city, has a proactive approach to that. But to me, that's important. Continue to work on the downtown and improving its appearance, trying to attract people to start something in downtown, and keep people here. I mean, it's just as important to keep people that are here. So those are the things that would interest me, in terms of the city. Does the city have a vision statement? I think that's kind of important to have. What we want the city to be. It's different than it was, 34 years ago. So I think it's important to have a vision statement. Whatever in your wisdom you think that would be like.
We do have a vision statement. I just can't remember what it is, which is a shame, which I should know, shouldn't we? We all should know it. Does anybody know what it is?
I have to look at the comp plan, I'm not sure.
It's in the comp plan, but obviously we don't.
So you're working towards fulfilling the vision statement or comprehensive plan or whatever?
We were just talking about comprehensive plan. We've done them in the past. Let's look back and see what we accomplished from the ones in the past.
The last one we did was
Probably almost 10 years ago.
almost 10 years ago.
2011.
Time to look at it.
Right.
2011?
Yeah, you did. It was initially issued in 2010. This is the public, the public dissemination as the draft was 2010, and then it was, you remember, Jim, 2011, and then I think the city made amendments around 2013, and into not amendments but updates. We mobilized Mulligan and Lonergan and did this stuff.
Right, I remember.
Refresh. Some of the maps are printed out, the other room in the green room, the pistachio colored walls.
Bill mentioned about vision. I guess I use the word identity. What is our identity? Back in the 70s, we kind of knew what our identity was. Steel working town. What's our identity now? To work towards.
Right.
Ligonier knows what they are. They're a tourist community, so they work towards that. And I think we need to find our identity again.
I agree.
A lot of this discussion might be a good follow-up for us, council, to do something like that kind of a discussion, looking at the comprehensive plan, how have we measured ourselves against measure ourselves against the comprehensive plan and see where we want to go going forward.
To follow up on the point that Bill may take a little further, poor Ann sitting here with code enforcement over on her shoulders. But like as an example, for instance, if the city said we have a lot of derelict properties, there's no way one person can keep up with it. We need to tighten our whatever it is, whether it's enforcement or our codes. I mean, I'm just following up. And you come to us and you say, can you help us? Can you help us? And we might need to hire a consultant to help us write a new ordinance, or we might need to hire a part-time something or another. I mean, that's the kind of thing, that's where a dialogue could take place. I'm not saying you have a problem with code enforcement, but I'm just saying this is an example of how we can work with you, our foundation. Bill's would be less likely to, Phillips Foundation would be less likely to do something like that. Our foundation, it'd be, we'd have the discussion.
And do we have a problem with code enforcement?
Well, no, I mean, there's.
No, I'm just saying, no, I'm not saying Ann personally, but I'm saying because she is only one person. So, you know,
At times, but
So I guess that becomes, and hello, my name's Christine Weller, I'm on council, I apologize for my delay, no disrespect to all of you, but I'm so glad that you're here this morning, I think this is wonderful. I think that brings up the question though, where does the city budget end and your involvement begin? You know, and are you watching the council meetings on the videos to know what's going on and what we're talking about? And, you know, how do we know when to bring you in on those kind of things? Like, that would have never occurred to me to come to you and say, hey, we need another staff member for Ann. I would think, we got to fit that into the budget, and Wayne's going to say, well, maybe we can't do that, you know, so when do we get you involved? Like, how do we know?
Yeah, talk to us. I mean, luckily I sit on the planning commission, so I see Ann on a very periodic basis, and I do know what's going on, so.
But that's not come up before. So when,
Well,
so you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, when does it become a thing to say, and if it has come up, the city doesn't know about it, we don't know about it, so how does that communication happen so that we're all on the same page? And that we know that you're looking at the same things that we're concerned about behind the scenes?
Just dialogue. You know, I'm in the Melville, or the Quatrini Rafferty building. I'm easy to find. So, I mean, just discussion. If there's issues, if there's things that you think, I mean, I'm not saying we have an open checkbook to underwrite city government, because we don't, we won't, you know. But if there's a special interim issue that might need addressed, you know, we can take a look at that.
So do you have people that come to you frequently, all of you, where you have to turn them away? Or
sure.
how do you determine?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Oh, my goodness.
said-
We get.
That's the next handout.
Yeah.
Probably not even friends.
I didn't know they were going to sit next to me.
Oh,
Say
absolutely.
no much more
Yeah.
than you say yes.
So
Yeah.
what makes you say yes? Let me ask you that. So,
Well, we have
so
a
the word-
mission statement, you know, well, I don't know, maybe you missed, I'm not sure when you came in, but we each are governed by a charter that our founders set up. And so we live within that charter. You know, we, just like, you know, you can't fund things in Lanier because you're Latrobe. You know, we can't fund things beyond, you know, what our charter allows us to do. And so our board of trustees evaluates things against our budget, you know, our annual budget. Foundations are McKeely Rogers, Catherine Mavis, and Philip McKenna Foundation run on an endowment, and the IRS requires us to distribute 5% of that endowment on an annual basis. So, I mean, that's our budget.
So you prioritize the requests and determine, based on your guidelines, what you think that is the
Sure,
best
we'll
use of
have
that
our
5%.
steady groups that, you know, we sort of give annual operating support to, because Kay, those were organizations she supported in her lifetime. We look at initiatives, we look at public involvement. You know, we were so pleased, I want to thank you all for supporting the revitalization project, because quite frankly, if you hadn't, we wouldn't have. Because it's like the OPM, you know, the people's money, you know, that doesn't sit well with us. We don't just, you know, if you as a council were not willing to, you know, support it, you know, we would have said, well, I guess the city doesn't think it's very important, so if it's not important, we won't support it.
So with all due respect, did that conversation happen as the city was planning about revitalization? Did they know that that was your concept? Because I wasn't involved back then.
Yeah,
so-
I presented that to you guys. And you,
But I mean,
you
behind
were
the
there.
scenes, and I know since I've come on board, but when revitalization first started, like, I'm just trying to see how things work in my head. Did the city know that that was from the beginning, that your involvement was there?
I think, since I've been involved with it since its inception, at least revitalization, we were initially, the city government was initially a player in it, because quite frankly, you're not going to get the DCED funding either if the municipality has to be the grant.
Yeah, initially upon birth, there's another bigger study back here when we applied in 2007 or 6. The statutes of DCD at that time was that revitalization programs for the progressive towns that want to do something about bringing the town back to life, the city is the applicant. So yeah, it was hand in hand. I wasn't even here. I was
Yeah,
That
so
wasn't
we have to
involved in
be,
that.
we had to be the applicant,
Back
and
in the day.
we also had to be a funding contributor. So at the time, I think we committed to like $10,000 a year for 3 years or something like that to get it off the ground. And you know, it's been my experience, and now I've been on council now, like I don't know, 14 years or something like that, that if it's important enough for us to spend money on it, then foundations and organizations, other organizations look more favorably on us to help the process, because we believe in it enough to put some of our funding behind it as a government. You know, if we went out and said, you know, we think this is a good project, but we don't want to spend any money on it. Why would you, if you were a foundation or even a private citizen, want to give money to something that we don't believe enough in to put some funding behind? Is that an accurate way to
And it's
present
not
it?
even unique to this panel too. I mean, it's all the time that people look at us as an example when I get asked to give speaking engagements in Harrisburg or next week in the county to cap off the new comprehensive plan, which is exciting, the findings of those of us that were at the Economic Growth Connection. Adam's here. I'll just announce really quick. He's looking to maybe do some development in our town, and he came to our table at the Economic Growth Connection with 300 of the main players in Westmoreland County Tuesday at Fred Rogers Center. It was a neat moment because at our table, Steve Patricia, our architect, was there, and they used Latrobe as their example for downtown development success. And so they showed like before and after of some of our facades, but the core findings of people that even if they're not going to live in a downtown with our density, the findings are that people more now than in the past several decades want strong downtowns. And so there's going to be a pivot to projects and infrastructure being funded, or at least in action items in the comprehensive plan, which are used for leverage when I apply for grants. So that's two, and it comes up where I'm in some other training in Harrisburg, and they say, well, this is what Latrobe has done. I think we're specifically unique, and it's not normal to have this many foundations. It's one of the items that attracted me to move back into town and not take an offer to move to Pittsburgh or something, right? So it's hard if this is all we've seen to think that this is normal, but it's not normal in a good way, right? And so, and I haven't always lived here. I've moved around a whole lot, and yeah, that's one of the things that I'm one of those that moved away briefly for a year to move back. I've heard that old stereotype.
It's interesting, as I travel around and talk to different, city managers, mayors, different things. We do take for granted the uniqueness of the fact that we have such phenomenal foundational support. I think most municipalities are struggling because they're living on their budgets and not much outside help. And even there's a lot that people will tell you. There is a lot of grant money out there, and not just grants from these foundations, but throughout the Commonwealth. You just have to know where to go get them, and you have to be able to support the need for them, both with your documentation as well as with some financial backing, like all the DCED grants that we get. We built the Lincoln Avenue Trail with $250,000 of DCED money, $250,000 of commitment from our foundations, the city, and different organizations. And that's where we got the other 250, and private industry, where we got the other 250,000. So
I think it's dialogue and understanding and cooperation. Again, the three pictures over there follow Chuck. Legion Kino was a swamp, and it started with the private sector. Couldn't do that today because of all the environmental things, but there's a hell of a lot of slag underneath. But then in the late, I was a senior high school painting the stadium. I fried to death painting the place. But that's when the flood control project happened. And they pulled all the dregs, the draggings from the Lahaina Creek. That created Creekside Park, as well as used to have, Chad, remember, used to have to park and then walk up to the stadium. Why? Because that was in the floodplain. It used to flood across there. So that created that in the middle 50s, and then, but there was a plan, and you can see that its infancy in the middle picture to where it is today, and that picture was probably 20 years ago. The plan was to create Legion Kino Park, but there was a plan. And that last picture was a cooperative effort between the city, the school district, and the private sector to make Legion Kino almost as we know it today. because that's, that's what we're stating. So that was one example. Another example too, and it's right across the street, as part of revitalization, it's a small parking lot. That parking lot looked like hell. But between the private sector, revitalization, FNB Bank, and the city paved the, from the Jefferson to the back of the Tropic building, I still call it the Tropic building, it became a nice parking lot. Again, the cooperation, everybody had ideas and input and some funding. Another great success is the bridge over the Mohana, I still call it the Kenmel Bridge. As we all know, those are going to be Jersey barriers. I mean, it looked like freaking, I don't know, Newark, New Jersey. But the city, revitalization, the private sector got together, had dialogue, and you see what the downstream size looks like. Involvement. And there's some things on the cusp of the new Amtrak station. I mean, it's out there. It's on the drawing board. So how can we get the private sector, the city of Latrobe, and its community to get together to create something like this? That maybe we can put some icing on the cake and make it an attractive station for people in this community.
Well, was it you? I'm sorry. Was it you that told me the story about prior to our Lloyd Avenue revitalization when Excel was recruiting doctors?
That story.
You tell that story?
Yeah.
Please tell that story because it's a fabulous story.
Yeah, I forget the name of the lady. Dorothy. She's from the hospital. Start with an S name, but I guess that's not important. But anyhow, when we did the project on there, she saw me one day and she thanked me and she said, you know, when we used to bring prospective employees into Latrobe to the hospital, we gave all these wild directions to get to the hospital so they would not come down Lloyd Avenue.
Yeah, and Homestead Hopes,
yes.
What was done on Lloyd Avenue, their projections for Mary Street, I mean, holy smokes. I mean, so if we all communicate and we all have dialogue, and funds are finite, you know, just, as Linda said, it's not enough to check it. But we can get a hell of a lot of progress.
So to my original question and vision, or challenges, and what do you see as our challenges, our biggest challenge right now?
I think Bill's comment, I think our neighborhoods are valuable. I see deterioration of our neighborhoods.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you. Thank you.
I quite frankly don't like to see boats and dump trucks on the streets.
Me neither.
I think we got to be active with that.
That probably requires an ordinance change, boats and dump trucks?
No, that's a vehicle code.
Vehicle code. So that's police?
That's police.
Well, whatever it is, it's an issue.
Can't have an ordinance. It's a state vehicle.
I think we need to get at that. I think that the abandoned houses, there's a perception, don't move into the truck. And it's there. It's dangerous, there's drug issues, there's problems, and it's there. We've got, as Jim said, we've got to create something. We've got to create a vision. We've got to create a new attitude. We are no different than anybody else. I've got a friend in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and we think we got problems. It's pervasive, the drug issue. But as people come through this community, as they travel through this community, they see things, the perception is there. We've got to change that. I think we can. We've got a hell of a lot going for us. But we've got to move into, I think, our neighborhoods and spruce them up. Example that I had when my dad was back on the council 150 years ago is you give them new sidewalks and curbs, you'll improve the houses. As I walk when the snow is heavy, the 400 and 500 blocks of Weldon and Spring Street are brick sidewalks. Now, I don't know how we do that, what the funding is, but when the first ward was revitalized with sidewalks and curbing, people started to fix up their houses, they put chairs on their front porches, and those those two blocks, there's been some issues, and even the 500 block of Main Street.
Didn't we see that in Lloyd Avenue too, when we started doing the Homes Built Hope, that some of the people, some of the other homes?
You that was back in the good old days, is when there was money aplenty. And actually, eligible homeowners, aside from what we did, we had about $3.5 million worth of construction, but aside from what we did, from redevelopment, eligible homeowners, and there were 12 of them, they got $40,000 grants to fix their homes up. And so, exteriors on the homes, so those were affected also. And then those people who were not eligible, we started to notice that people were starting to fix their houses up because they felt that there was value in fixing their house up. So, yeah, it spreads.
Yeah, it spreads.
Just
Yeah.
two quick things before the plug. The landscape, when we started doing, when Ron Weimer sort of retired, and I took the baton from Ron, for Lloyd, if you look at the softscape and landscape, they look like they were just done recently on the homes, which is a phenomena. And people tend to throw the clientele who live there under the bus, and their yards look, really immaculate. It's pretty telling. Just a quick note, because I'm listening and absorbing a recurring theme about people coming forward with an idea. I know the truth myself, I think I've struck out a lot more with ideas that I have, and I'm the revitalization manager, but I still have the discussions. The plug to First National Bank was when I worked in City Hall next to Ann, and we would look out our window and we'd get sick and tired of looking at it's almost a blighted lot, right? It was messed up in the wall there, and I started tinkering around on Photoshop, and things like move that over there, and we had come up with that concept. That was just Ann and I sort of chatting innocently, and then we threw it to the design committee. To hear that other funds, and I didn't know about that, were funded from that spark of a conversation, just sort of says that door is open. And if it's a bad idea, we're not aligned with those values, it doesn't go anywhere. But I think those conversations then spawn into another conversation. Whatever it is, like the street lighting project started and sputtered, and then we continued the conversation for 2 years, and now we're getting that dream we've always wanted. But anyway, it just
I don't know if you're going to mention any of this in your presentation, but you touched on it a little bit at the EGC dinner or luncheon. Latrobe is getting noticed at the county level and beyond because of the things that we're doing. The Reimagining Westmoreland County plan that they're working on. I've gone to some of the, I don't know if any of you've gone, but I've gone to some of the meetings, the visioning meetings that they've had, and its implementation, and it's interesting because they've identified some of the things that I think we identified even sooner, is that you got to remove blight if you want to improve your downtowns, and but this time what was interesting that I saw that I heard was the focus on the small towns. That they recognize the fact that even if you don't want to live in a downtown, you want access to a vibrant downtown. And so some people like the walkability of living in the downtown. Some people want more space and want to live in the suburbs. But from their research, everything corners around the fact that even if they don't want to live in the downtown, they want access to a vibrant downtown. And because of the things that we've done in the last 10 years of revitalization, I think we're on the path to getting more funding for some things from state, county officials, and in addition to our foundations. And so I think sometimes we live here and we don't necessarily see what's going on around us. And I just think from what I'm hearing, and I was thrilled because the very first slide when they talked about what some of the progressive downtowns are doing, the very first slide was the Potoff Building before and after, and the Mozart House before and after. And that was the first slide. I mean, then they showed Irwin's Lamp Theater and some of the other some things in New Kensington. But Latrobe slide was first because I think everyone recognizes we've come a long way.
Jim, I just wanted to comment that you made about I'll use the phrase cleaning up some problems with the residential areas. I think you could say that dilapidation, drugs, all kind of fit together in terms of properties becoming dilapidated. From what I know, talking with our solicitor, there's a court case right now that will have a major decision on the abilities of communities to regulate those landlord-tenant problems. As soon as that case is decided, if it's positive for the municipalities, then I think we can move forward on that.
Well, I mean, positive. We've got a library. Our churches are very strong. You see what's going on in the world today. We've got to get back to some churches that are strong in this community. We've got a $30 million elementary school being built. We have a $12 million community college right on our doorstep. We've got alleys. We've got sidewalks to walk on. We've got street lights. We've got a police department.
Got recreation.
We've got a recreation. We got revitalization. So there's so much good, that I think it's very positive. Across the street from me, a young nurse at Latrobe buys a house for $110,000. She's working her tail off and she's making a nice home. Right up the street, two people who moved out from Florida with 2 young kids. They finished the 2nd floor. They love living in Latrobe. I look out my window. One kid gets down with a skateboard, the other guy goes with his bike, and they're walking a German Shepherd dog on the path. There's a lot of great stuff going on in this community. We just have to work together and get on the same page. And there's issues there, and quite frankly, I've been here for 45 years. They're still there. I think we need to address them. We need to be active and proactive. That we can, if we all work together, I think we can really accomplish it.
Can I suggest we take?
Yes.
Because Jared's going to pass out.
Yeah, let's feed Jared.
Wait, Steve. All right, passing on some Girl Scout cookies. My daughter Gianna thought that she had a fast because we're Catholic last night, and she found out she didn't have to. She just didn't have to eat meat at like 7:30. And I don't know what happened, but like, this is a true story. They went in there, and there's like cookies in their hair, it was all on the floor. They were doing imitating the skaters, right? This went on until like 10:30, and I'm like, what is happening? I went to bed, and then I woke up, and they were still up. Bridget said, I just give up. So, as an adult, we eat all that sugar, and we get like a headache. I forgot.
Those are the cookies from the floor.
That's the only thing left up out of those 30 boxes.
They weren't on the floor?
No, those are fresh from a donor, and I've asked the donor, which is Linda, when we brought the kids up, that Linda donated them for meetings. So, in Monday's meetings with West Bend, okay. I'm an extroverted Italian. I'm going to keep this to 7.5 minutes, and hell is going to freeze over.
I'm going to set
That
the
didn't
timer.
count. No, don't. I think Chuck went over. Okay, so I did this in some images with some figures on the back. So the Main Street program approach, Main Street America, was done through a comprehensive assessments and what worked and what didn't, using scientific methods for how to bring towns back to life. In short, local government protects people property. The right arm, if they can get a Main Street program, enhances people-based property. So there's a lot of cross-pollination and overlap there. So we applied. I did, right before I came here, I went to the office to print these out, and I started realizing how many studies we have done already. This is our Main Street application, which is gigantic, and so we were birthed by a lot of comprehensive assessment of the public, if some of you remember. So this was not 4 people just coming together to be aggressive and make this organization, which they did, but that was done through the business climate and getting all the businesses behind us in the foundation community and everything else. So the planning is intensive, or more so than comprehensive planning. So you go through all this. We became a Main Street program a year after we were a nonprofit, so we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary in 2008. We have accomplished some things recently. I used to work at St. Vincent College, and Don Orlando was always mad at me because he said, you're doing all this stuff through the service learning office. Why don't you tell me anything? And I would find a way to say no and just focus on the work. And like I hear my board was like, you need to explain to people what's happening if there's some awards. So this isn't, it's just things that my board forcing me to talk about. So we were designated for a number of years, which is a hard thing to achieve, which is 7 years in a row. National accreditation, and particularly proud recently because they changed the standards, and there's only few, if any, national accredited in the state of Pennsylvania, And then for the first time, they assessed, they winnowed down the top 50 programs in the state, and we were humbled to be awarded the third best program in Pennsylvania, just recently through the metrics they use to show management of volunteer hours, leveraging public and private funds, job growth, and I think there's a project completion. So Bill Fontana, who some of you know, has a bazillion spreadsheets, and he uses those metrics based on our reporting. So when we report those funds, people know where the dollars go and how you reinvest them. So our mission, purpose, and governance, we do have a mission and vision statements there. Ironically, we're rebooting this. I called for this about 6 months ago. So our vision is to become the safest, most walkable, sustainable business and family-oriented small town in PA. We've got the little trademark trolley that says shop local Latrobe for the downtown businesses. There's one full-time executive director, which is me. We have a less than part-time design architect. Steve Patricia has worked for Time Magazine, National Geographic, you name it. He's in super high demand. I feed him lunch at Revitalitation. He's got the bug. By all means, we are so lucky to have him. Some of the city who's also on the design committee knows Steve. He's an architect and an artist and a historic interpreter. So we're really lucky to have Steve. We've got some interns that help with the books, and we have basically our art is the 100+ volunteer base that has an umbrella that overarches pretty much all the beautification elements of town. So a lot of unsung heroes, basically. So our funding, our operational budget is really lean. It's $85,000, 30 of which is critical from the city. We're mostly comprised of the foundation community, and we do get a lot of letters from people, from citizens, which is neat. Sometimes we're left in someone's will who our organization impacted. Mayor Chinchilla was one. No flowers, give to Revitalization, and she's really stubborn and actually wrote that in her will. So
sounds like Mary.
Yeah, she had a lot of personation. So that's always neat to see when those come in unsolicited. It shows that solidarity of the business community. We are unique in that our budget allows for us to, I'm not saying we're the grant writing arm of the city, but we do write a substantial amount of grants which have to be managed, which have to have follow-up and have to gain the trust of the organizations. You know, there's more people asking for grants now and less they give out. That's sort of a decent way to look at it. We've been really fortunate last year. We raised, through the help of many sitting in this room, on projects that go directly back into the downtown. It would be cool if, you know, there's some percentage that we can keep back to buy some other things, but $385,000, I don't think that will happen again, but that was a really good year. So that's on infrastructure, basically. So what does that mean? I just listed them really quick. The street lighting project, obviously, Mozart Hall, which was going to have a structural collapse, which could, you know, you never know. Someone's in there. We're lucky we caught it when we did. Basically 3 different, what do they call it, spot pointing, brick people. Vermondo and his crew all confirmed that it was going to have a collapse probably this year. So we saved the Mozart Hall. Pawed off last year. We got you know, the farmers market, placemaking, with those little parklet corners, street trees on Lloyd Avenue. In a couple weeks, I'll probably ask you all for help if you want to plant. It's the Friday after Easter. We're getting 20 trees for the Lincoln Avenue Trail through Tree Revitalize grant. You've heard of the new business incubator. That's a huge undertaking. We're really lucky to have that. That's rolling, and I'm getting a lot of inquiries, and we're already seeing the fruit of that. I'll sort of elaborate a little bit. And then streetscape furniture things. So the nice black look of all the streetscape is strategic and themed against the trademark trolley that Vivian Rogers allowed. When we looked up to, you know, part of the question is who we are. You know, I remember Steve Kitty talked about, hey, let's get banana split benches, the banana splits, and then other people say, hey, you should have the Steelers, and Rolling Rock on everything. And through the design committee, there seemed to be more of a universality with Fred's message for the thematic, strategic implementation of streetscape as a whole. And his reach is also international. Not that the business one isn't, but we're spoiled that you can choose between all those. That being said, there's also all the other things that we do that don't leave those aspects out. Real quick, the 2018 projects. The incubator, it's heavy lifting. It's the entire 3rd floor of the Katrina Rafferty building. The one doctor who's moving her business in, she said to me literally this summer, I saw the work at Mozart in Potoff, and then I saw about the incubator, and I decided to move into downtown Latrobe. Direct correlation to beautification helping drive development, just getting the word out. So she's going to, of course, as she graduates the program, move into downtown Latrobe. So that's really good. Continuing to raise money is number 2. The project management of the big core downtown, in particular the street lighting project, which is very complicated. It takes a lot of time, but it's going to be worth it when it comes in. That's happening. And then we interface with, I bother Wayne constantly. We work with PennDOT and with these individuals every week. So that's happening. So the core downtown infrastructure, our design team makes recommendations, and then, as you know, we put it in council's lap for what to bless or what to tweak. Job retention, new hires, and character distinction that happens through historic preservation. So that's going to continue. And then, continuing to bring attention. We've birthed some things, and when I came in, I think some changes needed to be made. The Banana Split Festival really was cannibalizing the previous director's time, Steelers Fest. So those are things that, I was proud to help start. But when I was asked to become the interim director, I saw immediately that it wasn't going to work if we were just an events organization. Not that we were at that time, but that's really easy to fall into that trap. So we were lucky to, with our friends at the chamber and those relationships, to unload some of those while still playing a supporting role, if that makes sense. So on the other side, threw together some quick visuals. This was interesting. The left column, it's one of those things when you're moving quick, you don't really know how many that you've done. And this is the first time I've really sat and charted. So these are all the buildings that we've brought back to life. And it's been a journey. This is through the facade grant. And so our goal, one of our goals, is to not stop until all the downtown businesses are brought back to life. It's a really high goal, and it's really challenging, but we're very aggressive, and we've got a really good team right now, so you kind of strike when the apple's hot. So those are all the buildings we're proud to bring back. Some, I'd say like 3 of them are very, very low because the owner wouldn't put up any money. It was just up to the business that was renting. But most of those are really good owners that put up a lot of money, and in some instances a lot more money than we could even match them with. But us doing the project management in-house and designing everything, and then community-minded contractors, we go really far with a little bit of money. So there's that. Scotty G's Danny Pastry and Jocelyn's and Dr. Scott Solanzi are all up. So we're working a lot of hours every week on all 4 of those right now. The numbers on some jobs that have come in, I think in total only 6 or 7 businesses have left the past 4 years. We have about 20 new that have come in. And some of these, you may be reading these and you never heard of them. Winter's Edge Trading is across the hall from me in the Katrina Rafferty building. They're really good. They just don't have a storefront. They're up on the 4th floor of the Katrina Rafferty building. He came in, he just hired 4 new full-time workers, for instance. Ground Zero Pittsburgh, you guys seen this guy. He came through our incubator. He just moved into the St. Clair building. He teaches mixed martial arts. His classes, cars are just packed. He's got 20, 30, 40 people coming to these classes. He knows what he's doing. So we were able to use our incubator to help launch him, but he was boom, ready to move into a storefront. So that's a really good business. And I don't want to mess with him. Like, he kept saying, like, thank you so much. And I was like, if I ever get in trouble, I'll just call you. Yeah. Anyway, most of those, I would say 90% of these are what our core focus is, which is the core downtown. We do get involved with some things on the fringes. If you look in the bottom right, the Lincoln Avenue and St. Vincent Latrobe Trail. This one I'm particularly proud of because, we knew as instigating these that there's no way our organization can oversee these type of things. Like that would be arrogant and ridiculous. So I think initially the Lincoln Avenue Trail, we had courted grad students from IUP And we just sort of carried that torch for years, and they made concepts and working with the foundation say, hey, can these students make something as a design concept? And then Nick Felice and I wrote half the grant, Jim wrote the other quarter, and Jeannie wrote the other fourth for that $250,000. And I remember working evenings up in the old church days, because they were going out of business. There's some, what was it?
It was a civic club.
Civic club. So I would go in the evening and talk to the old church ladies, and they would ask some really hard questions. I would come back the next few weeks, and they would grill me, and then Mary Chinchilla was the deciding factor. They gave like $22,000, and then the foundation's community took it from there, and Craig does an amazing job keeping it up to date. So that's just a neat one of us working together. St. Vincent, we sort of help with the studies, and then obviously, again, we're an anomaly because we have someone like the Catherine Mace McKenna Foundation who can actually really oversee this thing because it's too big for us. Placemaking projects. Mr. Regula's lovely bar burning down. When I first started this position as an interim, I had really no intention. I wasn't thinking about staying. I understood quickly why Main Street managers turn over every year and a half. You walk down the street and you just get the negativity. I think it was probably 90% negative, 10% positive. Once we started cranking these projects out and just keeping our heads low, I'd say it's like 90% positive, only 10% negative. And I mean that honestly. I get stopped a lot more with people excited about what they're seeing in town, and that's great. So that's just that's a little part of it. There's others, like the one that we work with you all and Wayne and Mike over by Medicine Shop. That city property was run down. Some lady fell off the thing, split her head open from the sidewalk lifting. So we came in, said, hey, can we work with you guys and fundraise and make this work? It was a total, I think it was like $14,000 we put into there. But the cool thing was there was so many different donors who stepped up to make that one. So when we get beautification money in, it goes back into the community. So, and that's just some curb appeal things. The streetscape speaks for itself. Again, we're sort of in the process of delegating events while keeping them running and playing a supportive role. Farmers market, you know, we had mentioned Revitalization Cafe. She immigrated here from Italy, and then she had a big following at the farmers market. And then after the farmers market, we were able to get her own business, right, inside the art center. So the farmers market, again, there's weak correlation sometimes, and there's strong. That was a stronger one. So we're proud to keep it at $10 per person because it's give the small entrepreneur a chance. So there's that. Lloyd Avenue Gateway, Chad and Ron Weimer. Ron was our first president. There's 4.79 that I know of that went into this instrumental critical project. It was super complicated. It's not done yet, but it certainly is close. Now with the new bridge coming in, there's so much opportunity to finish what we started with those few remaining poles. So we got Tree Yoda there, Jim Walter. He's going to get mad that in the Latrobe Times I called him Tree Yoda. It's right up. There he is. And again, sustainability and environmentalism are important to us. Obviously, I was aware that trees were a touchy subject 7 years ago when we started planting some trees because they were done wrong. But having someone like Jim Walter, again, of his caliber, we plant very slow and strategic, and he lets me know if it's he lets me know if it's done wrong, and then he gives it to me. So anyway, that's a snapshot. I did again grab some of these. I mean, keep around. You're welcome to borrow them. There's different plans. Here's actually a municipal comprehensive plan for Latrobe and Unity, a proposal to do a joint comp plan. This is just a student, slowing downtown Latrobe. This is the one for Amtrak that led for leverage for that to be brought up to code for the new train station, Jumperillo. I get one phone call a month, easy, saying we're the ugliest train station from here to New York City. So now that it's going to become ADA compliant, I know this isn't city property, it's Norfolk Southern, but it's good for everybody. So once it's ADA compliant, then it can be designed. And then our comp plan, and then our master plans for revitalization. So some of this drives the basis for the projects we tackle strategically. It is always good to have consultants look from the outside in, but with our density and how compact we are, you guys know your town. We know Latrobe, so we kind of know where the trouble areas are, with or without a plan. So,
Jared, how much is it going to cost to get the Amtrak station ADA compliant?
I don't know. I think a lot. Everything. I don't think they have they're putting the bid out now for the design, so it's not there, but that's because it's so expensive.
Right, Dino?
No, I reached out and we never got a response.
Yeah. part of the reason why it looks like that.
Did they give you any indication as to how they're thinking about doing that? I mean, with that steep set of stairs.
I think I would just guess this. No, I would just guess this. The
other side?
Good question, Jim.
Okay.
Elevator?
No, then you'd be crossing the tracks.
The elevator might be cheaper.
Just wondered.
So, so in light of that, we sometimes get involved with things outside of our boundaries, but really a lot of our core funding for a downtown boundary that no one in this room drew, we are bound to do a lot of that, and there's plenty of work still to do. As much as we've accomplished here, we are well aware of the trouble areas. We are on the brink of getting a little bit more funding for downtown. I will be clear, the most difficult strip to revitalize is Ligonier on Main until Main and Ligonier until Main and Alexandria. Right, we all know we've got 333 Main Street. We have issues. We're sensing momentum now. We've got much more reasonable building owners, and that's key. It's something I can't control. It's something none of you can control. But there's a couple properties for sale. We get those into better hands. We'll work with them nonstop to rehab their buildings and get good businesses in there. Yeah, I can just talk about it and stuff. 7 minutes.
Questions for Jared?
I'm sure that was a blur.
Questions for Jared?
Just as a sidebar, I didn't realize you were working, I think Ann may have mentioned that you were working with Dr. Slancy on the front end of the building. He's asked us to look at the courtyard. So it might be something for us to talk about and do a combination, with Dr. Slancy, but also with the design committee.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Dr. Slancy. This is one of those other really neat things. I don't think he's made a secret. He's put over $300,000 into his building to completely redo it, all new everything. And so he's expanding. He just hired a recent Wildcat and moved back and got his doctorate as a dentist. And once it's done, more people will be hired. And this is in, we call this, Courtyard Plaza, front-facing Main Street. Where, but that's really good news. So he's not doing any structural changes on the outside. It's basically paint. So we're really preliminary with him, just kind of picking out colors. He's going to redo all the lighting.
Well, preliminary, we talked to him about it. But, it's going to come down to a matter of affordability. Always, that's unfortunate.
We talk about the ramp down to.
Well, the entire courtyard
isn't the nicest.
Well, the ramp's not ADA compliant.
Isn't it?
No, it's too steep.
It's fun for kids.
Well, it's a quick ride down. But the reality is the entire courtyard needs to be addressed. And he's talked to us about it. And, it's so preliminary. I haven't mentioned it to the council yet because it's so preliminary.
But yeah, he himself is moving full steam ahead there. And then Dr. Stairs next to him is going to look to do some more upgrades. And you've got the Masonic building, who they're on the historic registry now for protected historic places. They just got that, but we work with them on their facade, and that's a success story. I mean, those storefronts are filled. Grey.Comics, Comics, we work with their design, their theming. One of the neat things is we have such a good relationship with Blue Sky Sign Company that we can drive. It's sort of like a Trojan horse to get involved with more things. So they say, hey, I want some signage. We then step in and say, have you thought about branding differently? Then we'll make a logo for free. And 99% of the times they love it. And then you can get involved with other things like, we thought about this. They're spending money. Entrepreneurs are not always good business individuals, right? They could be stubborn, like all of us. That's a double-edged sword, and it can be really good for them because they need to have endurance. The incubator, in part, is to help find those strengths they do have and backfill in the issues that they may not have a training or an undergraduate degree. You don't need an undergraduate degree to be a successful business owner. But there are some things to say with SCORE and the SBDC and different strategists that we pay for to come in and work specifically to their need. The doctor who just moved in, she has 17 full-time employees in West Virginia. Her issue is extremely technical. She needs meta tags and search engine optimization. So when people do keyword searches for natural therapy for children, it's accustomed to these providers, UPMC, Hallmark. Well, there's a whole other set of insurance providers in West Virginia. When people go on Google, who are they going to find? They're not finding her yet, right? So we're having actually Winter's Edge training across the hall. He specializes in SEO, so I'm going to pay him to go down and meet with her specific to that need. And then we'll bring in other speakers, or not speakers, just sort of one-on-one to help them out. So I need help with that too. So as we get more information out about the incubator, I talk to people about it. Yeah, tell them that this exists, and then have them call me if you're not sure. But it's free rent for up to 9 months. Can't beat that. We're the only free incubator in the state. We're the only city that has an incubator and a facade program. I don't know if that'll ever come back again. The latest budget from the federal is to literally cut out all of USDA, like the entire organization of USDA. I just read that 2 days ago. So that may be gone. So anyway, these are good days for us to use the money while it's here when we can't control some of those other trends. I've made no secret. I've reached out to Excella. Haven't heard back yet. I'll keep reaching out and see if some of their IT arm or their administrative.
Actually, I just have been communicating with them as well.
Oh, good. So anyway, we'd love for them to come back.
Wayne, I would maybe encourage all of us to get together on that courtyard.
Yeah, or the next design committee, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been preliminarily. They're coming back with a general idea of the cost, and then we would need to sit down and look at the design and see how the cost would be distributed. It's our courtyard, but obviously, it's not in the budget, so we have to see where we can come up with the money for it.
Well, I think because I think there's some vacant spaces down there, and people use that. I thought where that hairdresser was.
Scott expanded, he took over. He took over the church and then there's a massage parlor and
The massage parlor?
Whoa. Those are
Is that in the church?
What are you doing?
How do we get together as a dozen hours, 24 hours?
I didn't realize you were working on something for the front of the Solanci, so yeah, it certainly would be a good build off of that.
He approached us, and then we never moved forward because he was so involved with the construction. We're going to start back up with him.
Okay.
A little bit. I'm eyeing, Jocelyn's. I would love for someone to buy. It's for sale for it's on 67. There's a strip. Steve did an architectural rendering worth probably $10,000. Mozart. You have Hewitt Real Estate, Mozart Hall, and then you've got the building that are basically married to one another. You have Computer RX, former Aunt Dolly's Emporium. She's one of the businesses that left for health reasons. She's a bit older. And then Jocelyn's Beauty Salon. Jocelyn has a legitimate good business. And I'll tell us that Jocelyn, people don't know there's a business in there because it's that run down. She's great. She's in there. So we did an architectural study already, just the visual. I don't think I put it on here. That's a strip now. With Mozart being secured and Hewitt Real Estate taking over Decay's Tailoring, that's a strip we can knock out. We should be huge. And then if we can ever get 333 to get picked up and put 10 miles somewhere else, it's a new day. But we now believe for the first time the most at-risk section of our town is now dependent on this swinging. Just a quick note on downtown being brought back. Part of that too, the assessment of the county comp plan has picked up the national trend that malls are going out of business literally fast. They were built at a time when energy didn't cost as much as it costs now, and with online shopping. So Amazon has taken out big box retail more than it's taken out core downtowns. And plus, since Amazon can't recreate the same type of serotonin releases you get in a cool downtown with a Fred Rogers statue and face-to-face interaction, Amazon will only be a threat to some point for core downtowns. It's always going to, it seems like, be a bigger threat to big box retail.
In certain services, you can't go to Amazon and get your haircut. Yeah. You can't go to certain, there's certain core businesses that you're going to go.
And you can't go to Amazon to have an experience like you have at Danny Pastry.
Right.
Nothing smells that good.
No.
And then massage.
Somehow we go back to food again.
Yeah.
Massage and food.
Jared?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I heard from a doctor, why his patient would refuse to come downtown to his office is our one-way traffic. And I think that's something where we as a city need to take a hard look at. If we want to encourage people are afraid to drive in downtown Latrobe, strangers. So we can.
It is confusing.
I work.
There's no question.
Yeah, Jim, I mean, I'm not making this up. In the Petrini Raftery building, I'm front-facing depot, so I see the one-way. It is every single week. I see cars driving one way. I mean, I assume they are sober, good people that just don't know they're on a one-way street. And so you have that issue. And then, so I've always beat that drum that we absolutely need Hotel Loyal area that become two-way. I'll give a further case for that over in this community development summit. Hotel Loyal, which we rehabbed. Caddy Corner is a guy who already put $100,000 into that historic property. Yeah. Then you have the tattoo parlor that moved in. Okay, that's good as a business, it just moved in, and then you have the land bank that demoed that property. So all of a sudden, within 1 year, you have all that. It's almost like it's called an Elm Street approach, right? If we never get the brewery to under, do a fund there. When you have all that activity now, that would give rise, and the Salvos hopefully isn't going away. So you have that little hub there. If we can get the grant that Ian wrote to bring the underpasses back to life with historic railroad colors, you almost see an expansion of your footprint. So there's that happening right there. And the other side is Bees Knees Sweet Buzz Cafe. They're really good at what they do. She opened hotels before, and they have a Sweet Buzz Cafe in another town, and they brought it here into Latrobe, and they're doing really well. I was there last Saturday and got a great coffee, and there must have been 30 people in there. Random Saturday, and this is, with February, this is dead time. So that's over by the former St. Vincent Paul.
But to Jim's point, we've talked, I don't know how many times we've talked about making Ligonier Street two ways down to Depot, from Thompson Street to Depot. But, we talked about that brings other challenges too. But,
It brings in the state. It brings in the state.
Exactly, yeah.
That, and look at the telephone or the light pole you've taken out numerous times. It's finally got moved back. I don't know if that's really going to make a difference or not. But if you put a car there, that truck's trying to turn.
That's a good point.
We have to look at that and try to eliminate.
Yeah, the turn. Yeah, you almost have to do a major.
Well, the frustrating part about that is,
and ask Friday for a bigger turning radius.
But the reality is that's if you go down one block, you have a giant intersection to turn that was designed for trucks. But anyways, we're getting way into the
that's the stuff.
Okay, I know. But
yeah, that's all good stuff. I don't know. I don't have a little closing speech. I'm just saying, threatening me. She said she needs to look at one.
Okay.
This is really good. This is really good. We're all here. Hopefully we keep meeting like this. Well, not every month, every couple months or something. Not on a Saturday.
All right, Craig. You're up. Wait, Jim.
You can just see how we all cross over. We're all in this soup together, and if we coordinate, communicate, and support each other, we can make a great impact.
And I don't see any other town doing what we're doing on Saturday.
And we're lucky to have this guy. Sometimes you got to pull him off the ceiling, but we're lucky that he's nonstop. He's creative, great ideas, a lot of contacts.
I've been on the board for a relatively short period of time, so I guess it's actually been a couple of years now. So I guess I could say this without being self-serving. I'm asked by the Westmoreland Planning and Development to go to meetings in towns all around the county, and they say the group's getting together and they want to do some planning. Can you help them out? Give them some ideas. So I go to these, and you give them some ideas, and they're usually a group of citizens with some officials there, and they're really well-meaning. They really are. And then, so you give your ideas, and then you leave, and then like maybe a year later, they ask you to go back, and you go back, and they're talking about the same thing that we talked about the year before I was there. And so when I was asked to be on this committee, I first said no, because I don't need any more of that. And then finally I said, well, gee, I'm a native of Latrobe, I gotta go. So I went, in the first meeting that I went to, we were talking about some stuff, and I gave a couple ideas out, and about 3 days later I get a call from Jared, and he's following up on it, and the next meeting I go to, the particular thing was done. And so one of the things that I said is really important is the difference between that and the other ones that I went to. We had someone working full-time there that was their job. It wasn't just all well-meaning. So that was important. And then, of course, the group that we have on there. But the other thing, and I'm not saying this because you guys are here. Jim will vouch. He's sick of me saying it. I said, one of the big things that I've noticed is the difference is that we have foundations that are involved in the city and the city government. Everybody cooperates. I said, but nobody else, it seems to me that I've been there, they have foundations that are interested in it. So when I heard that we didn't get the grant for the lighting, and then Jared said, I got bad news, we didn't get the grant, but the McKenna Foundation is going to do it. I go, well, imagine that. That doesn't help. That doesn't happen anywhere else. So, Jim, I agree with you. I mean, this is an exceptional community, but I also agree with you. Don't get lazy. Don't get lazy. So, but anyhow, it's been a pleasure. I've dropped out of every other organization I've been involved with because I'm actually semi-retired, but this is the one that I decided to stay on because things actually get done. So,
We're glad you stayed.
And I think in bigger municipalities, they actually employ like city planners,
Sometimes 2 and 3.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, we don't have that, a dedicated. So, for the city, it's kind of an inexpensive way for us to have the advantage of someone full-time working on the planning and revitalization of the downtown without having to incur the expense of a full-time 1 or 2 employees.
And okay, I do have something to close. Kurt Thomas is he's the architect for the school district. Yeah, Kurt Thomas, Sarah Crispin Thomas's husband, facilities guy. So he emailed me out of nowhere. I haven't talked to him in months, and he emailed me a link 3 days ago and said, "Jared, it's like my hometown had been doing this. I'm so proud of where they come." He's like, "It reminds me of what's happening in Latrobe. I want you to watch this YouTube video."
I watched it.
So I fast forwarded it, and I'm a power reader, and I'm a power YouTube watcher, so I don't watch the whole thing. But I got to the 20-minute mark, and he said something fascinating. He said, "All right, now this is this town. It was this German historic street. It wasn't a massive street. It was like 2 streets, like their main area." And he said, "Well, this is pie in the sky when we started." And he shows the renderings and the planning. And he's like, in over 3 years, he said, "We understood." So we got involved with the local government city council. He said, "We understood really well the local government's responsibilities. They're not designers. They are responsible for paving the roads, paying the bills, take all the things, the million things that." He said, "But we engaged them, and we worked with the foundation, and their revitalization time was their progressive library." So the 3 entities got themselves into a room, and they took all their talents and their energy and their frustration, and they just hyper-focused on one project and not on bickering one another. And they showed this before and after, and I was floored of what happened there. Literally every building on the strip was brought back to life. I don't know if we have one for us, but I'm again going to plug Main Street, Ligonier to Alexandria. That's a similar size. I don't know. I mean, our arms open. We don't have all the answers. We have some talent on our team, but I think that talent also lies in the city council right now to find ways that we can have high impact meetings that don't have a bunch of minutes, not a bunch of fluff, but we can hyper focus on certain core areas. I don't know what that project is. I'm just saying that would be interesting with the talent we have in this room if everybody was focused. That's happened a few times, right? This is as far as I've ever seen the city come by long shots, and this is really exciting. But it'd be interesting to see what that project could be. If everybody put all that energy. That's it.
Thank you.
7 minutes.
Okay. Greg, wait. So Jerry has a question.
Sure.
2-minute answer. I'm not fine.
Have you ever had somebody who wants to bring a business in town, but there's no room?
Yep. Oh yeah.
One of the brewers, remember? Didn't we have
the brewer. Well,
like what if we need another supermarket and somebody wants?
Okay, it would take too much time. The supermarket idea was assessed. Supermarkets are the most expensive thing to run, and they don't work on a small scale. But I don't know, to say I'm dead wrong and Gary Quinlivan is wrong, we're all wrong. Yeah, we would embrace that with open arms. There's several things. We have the maps, we know our property, the foundation owns some of the bigger areas, but we are landlocked, but who knows? Maybe Lehigh Specialty becomes the new supermarket. But there's already a supermarket there, but I'm just trying to say, we take them face to face, we form a relationship with them, that's how we had success. And then walk around town. Adam just contacted us, and I think that Adam, hey, let's walk town now. So Adam's going to come back, I hope, unless he scared him off today.
WCCC. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, WCCC came here because Jim took the president up into the 6th floor, and they looked out the window through a relationship and pointed to that area. And then after a lot of work, it got walking to town.
We had brought in representatives from EGC, I believe, and the redevelopment authority of the county, and they walked the town to find space to put the community college to see where. And then once we everyone identified what the best area might be, then the community college went into trying to purchase those properties. And really, if you'd have thought about, if someone came to you and says, we want to build a building like WCCC, your first thought would have been, well, we don't have the land, move them somewhere else. But that's not what we do, and that's a perfect example.
I contact Ann. Right, and then I call Jim or Linda, and I make sure that my understanding is comprehensive. So then I start contacting all the people who would know a property that might be available. Like that land next to Mr. B's is also owned by Ed O'Bardo, the other section of it. and I know him personally, so if something ever came like a hotel, that was an area I thought might work. You know, is that land? And I already talked to Ed, and he would sell it. But you see what I'm saying? It's almost like one person can't have all those answers, and I don't attempt to think I have all those. I just, you know, then if it goes south, I say it's all your fault.
Okay, Craig, you're up.
All right, I'm Craig Shepchuk. I'm the Recreation Director. You have your handout here that we'll go over in 7.5 minutes, 5 minutes, Jared. But the history of the Recreation Department was started in 1944 by City Council. It was consisted of 5 members, and back then, again, forward thinking, 2 of those members were from the school district, and that was unique to operate a park and rec department at the time, because then you can actually get more funding from the borough, from the school district, and nonprofits. Way back when, some of you know, way before my time, the community chest. The community chest kind of went away, and United Way started taking over some of our funding there that I'll get to a little bit later. And then in 2005, we became Latrobe Parks and Recreation, joined the school district, Unity Township, and Youngstown Borough to create a Latrobe Unity Parks and Recreation Department. Again, that was a regionalized efforts. That was a 10-year agreement. Unfortunately, after the 10 years, Unity Township decided not to renew for their own reasons. And so we sit here today in 15, yet again, another name for Latrobe GLSD Parks and Recreation. So here we are. Our purpose, creating community through people, parks, and programs. Our main purpose is to provide the greater Latrobe community with recreation opportunities, services, and facilities. And again, you can see, you know, we work side by side with the foundations and Jared to try to go ahead and provide healthy lifestyles, reduce stress, raise property value by having the parks in good working condition and having them use them. The department is overseen by 6 commission members, the City of Latrobe, Greater Latrobe School District, and 2 at large. And I've listed our current members. It's a 3-year commitment, and you can see right there, Sue Maines is in attendance. She's been with the board for
Since 1996, 21 years.
Again, and it's nice to have somebody on board like that, because the history really dictates how you're going to go forward and the mission that you want to try to complete. So there's our board right there. Jerry just was appointed by you guys, so we're glad to have Jerry on board going forward. Our funding, I listed how we're funded. We're sort of tax-based. As you can see, the Greater Latrobe School District, community support, and community support came involved when Unity Township pulled out. That left us a deficit of $160,000. So if you're running a business, which we are, and you take out $160,000 or a %, of your operating budget, you're in serious trouble. So, you know, I'm going to pat myself on the back, the commission, and the foundations for helping us out so we can move forward. But you can also see the bottom one is program revenue is 40%. If you go to any other park and rec department, that is unheard of to generate 40% of their own operating budget. So, any questions on that? Also, before when Unity Township first came in, the community chest, back to the community chest, and maybe Jim can shed some light on this, but the community chest, a bunch of organizations, companies would put their money in the community chest, and then they would disperse the money. And we used to get a big chunk of that money. Somehow, community chest went into the United Way. And they promised us to make sure that we would get that money. Well, there was no really written documents or anything, just a handshake, people turn over, eventually that eroded from, I think it was like $60,000 to zero. Luckily, we partnered with Unity Township and got that money to come in so we could stay operational, so we didn't feel that hit. So again, we are always working with the community and thinking of ideas of how we can fund ourselves the best possible way and the best way, the sustainable way to do that. You want to say anything? Any questions on that?
I just have a curious one. So, without getting into the weeds of the whole breakup, if I don't live in Unity, but if I lived in Unity, my kids would go to the playgrounds in Latrobe. I never understood this. And then my township stopped supporting your playground that we used to be. Do my kids still gonna be on the swings? You know what I'm trying to say?
We're open. We're open to everybody. What we did for, we used to have a 3-tier system for when you sign up for a swimming program or a soccer program.
Yeah.
City of Latrobe would always be the cheapest because they give us the most support. Then the Greater Latrobe School District, and then outside the school district. So usually the school district is Unity, and then that dissolved, and so there was only 2, and now we're back to the 3-tier system again.
That's right. Because my daughter did Ninja Warrior. It was the coolest thing ever.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah. My couches, thank you. Just kidding.
Yeah. Right, it was sort of, yes, that's my brainshot. And then on the back, where we're probably going to spend most of our time is upcoming projects. I'm writing a DCNR grant, again with the sale of the athletic field and the deck hockey facility. The city is holding money from that sale, and we're going to go ahead and write that. Here's the scope of work. I've already presented this to council. Some of the things we have tweaked a little bit to stay within our budget, which will be about $380,000 project. So we're excited about that. So that is actually, I just sent a letter to Wayne asking for a couple of letters of support. One is financial, and one is just backing the project of how important it is to the community.
When's the grant application due? April?
It's April 10th, I believe, yes.
And then it's awarded in October or something?
Yeah, it'll be awarded in October if we actually get the monies, hopefully, then we can actually start the project in spring of 19. Correct. A couple things that I do want to that really wasn't on the outline. This is about communication. We do have 2 brochures that we put out. The city puts information in the school district, which I think these are fantastic. And I know people go online for information, but every household gets one of these. And the way we do it, it's not a newspaper, print or anything. I think these are really fantastic, and it has a lot of information in it. So we go ahead and we print 2 of these a year and send these out.
Are those, what is it, do those get tucked into the bulletin?
No, these actually, these get mailed to anybody that's at the Greater Latrobe School District.
Wow, so what's that distribution list? You know how high it is? Big number? It's a lot.
Yeah,
I see that thing everywhere.
It is a lot.
It's really well done.
30,000 people.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Probably everybody in Unity Township and the city of Latrobe.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that anyone read anything until the first time I wrote one of those, and I was in church, and people started saying stuff, and oh my gosh, I got to pay attention to what I write, because people read that thing.
Yes, correct. People do.
Jared, let me just give you a piece of advice. You should always pay attention to what you write.
Hey, Jared's my time, okay?
I'll pay you give yourself.
Yeah, I know.
Father Jared?
Yeah, I know. So these go out, and then also you will get an annual report that I actually just gave away on Friday. So if you guys are wondering what's going on, this is just a snapshot of what we do. So every year I will give this to council and the mayor through here. A couple of things. We don't actually work a part of the city, but not a part of the city, which is a little strange. So we sort of a department, but we don't actually own anything. We're kind of a facilitator and a maintainer of property, and which there's a lot is recreation facilities like Legion Keener Park that has playland, 3 pavilions, band shell, ball fields, tennis courts, sand volleyball, and grass courts, a gazebo. And then we actually maintain the grass area by St. Vincent de Paul. That is also under us. Creekside Park, Memorial Drive, all-purpose field where midget football practices and also Little League uses. Hillside, any snowy day you drive out of town, get on Dunwoody Road, you see kids sled riding on out there. It's fantastic. First Ward, again, city-owned. We maintain it and program that. Third Ward, which was done 2 years ago up at St. Clair. Creekside, which now is our one of our heavily used parks. Most of the soccer, t-ball, or wiffle ball tournaments out there. So that's heavily used. And then also John Street, the horseshoe courts are, the Lincoln Trail, and then the swimming pool, Billy Rogers swimming pool. We have a staff of 5 full-time employees, 2 office, which everybody knows, Dawn Vavick and Cindy Smith. They have all been here 15 plus. Dawn actually is in her 21st year. I'm in my 17th, so you can see that we do value and stick around and like our jobs. 1 maintenance, Jay McDowell, 1 program person, then we have some seasonal and some part-time people helping. So our annual budget is $570,000. So, any questions?
Just one. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to, has anyone ever thought of utilizing the foundation property down by St. Vincent de Paul for a temporary winter ice skating rink? Nobody's thought about it, or no? We don't?
That was a substation.
Big part?
It was a
Yeah,
substation.
I realize that.
You can't have recreational facilities on it.
Oh, really? Just because of pollution?
Babe.
Okay, well, move it somewhere else. No, but I mean, you talk about an identity. To me, Latrobe could be the holiday town. I mean, we already do a lot on the 4th. We do a lot on Christmas. We do banana split, but why not? Maybe that be part of our identity. But I'm thinking around Christmas time, that'd be nice.
So I know what you're doing. Well, I know this isn't all under me, but you really think about this town, the special events that actually gets held here.
Yeah.
It's really, we're the special events town. I mean, with the banana split, with the Fred Rogers, with the Steelers coming here, with the 4th of July. Those are huge events that happen down here. So, and that takes everybody. You know, I'm sure Mike loves those.
Yeah, the other, just to expound on this, the other thing that came out of the city, the county's plan, and I reference it because it's encouraging to me to see that the county recognizes the things that I think we here in Latrobe kind of already knew, and how important recreation was, because one of their other points at the EGC dinner was the fact that our park system, and what an incredible, for the whole county, park and recreation system we have in the county. And I think, you know, for when you think of the 2.2 square miles of Latrobe, I mean, we've got to be pretty much probably the leader in that in the county, based on, you know, size and area and things like that. So I just find it encouraging to get to reinforce, when I hear reinforcements from county and state folks, that the things that we've always valued we've been valuing the right things. So I just thought that was important to mention, that was a big point of theirs also.
What you saw in this morning's paper, I think West Newton just increased their millage 3 mills. 1 for general operating, 1 for a pool, and 1 for a green space recreational system. Greensburg is closing their pool and their system for a whole year, and they are getting back into the recreation programming, moving away from the Y. When Unity came in, Chuck Mason was instrumental. He and Mike Ferguson saw the need to combine the 2 municipalities. I can't tell how many hours and aggravation, God bless him, he put into this, which was a tremendous challenge. Our recreation program, what the city invests in that, and the return on that investment. Craig mentioned United Way. It went from the community chest, it was part of that in the United Way, and then boards changed and it all went away. That was I think it was $80,000. Then he lost 160 from Unity. It's $250,000. And the program that they produced with those 5 people and those 100 volunteers for our community is absolutely incredible. And what does Unity Township do? They give $50,000 to the Y in Greensburg, for Christ's sakes. He mentions this brochure. The whole community was part of this. The school district, recreation, revitalization, Latrobe Arts Center. It was the go-to piece to put on your coffee table. That anybody coming into the community, what the hell's Latrobe? Oh, here it is. You can pick it up. You can go to it. If you're not familiar with it, Unity Township pulls out of that, and they're creating their own community news. They aren't a part of the greater Latrobe system. If you understand our library system, which we as people in this community contribute to out of our tax dollars, their budget has been cut by the state and locally. They do one hell of a job. The people that what they do for what they get paid is absolutely incredible. Their mission is invaluable. Unity Township used to contribute $50,000 to them. They used to have to go beg, borrow, and steal to get that. Mike O'Barrow cut that to $0. Then he brought it back to $25,000, and then when he was approached, he said, "Oh, we'll give you what you gave, what we gave last year." Well, it was $50,000 last year, not 25. They cut that funding, totally gone, and they said, "We'll give you $3,000." And I should ask the library. I guarantee you, in this last year, they didn't give the $3,000. So our Adams Memorial Library in our community lost $50,000 on a budget was absolutely ridiculous. So what we're faced with here is providing those kinds of services, and what we do as a community on the private sector in the school district and the city. The investment we make in our recreation system, in our revitalization, in our libraries is well worth it. How we get back to working with Unity and the challenge, God bless Sue, who chaired the recreation program. Not only were we getting kicked in the teeth by Michael Barlow and the supervisors, the people that he placed on those boards were absolutely destructive to this community and those programs. So that was a challenge. Whether we can resurrect that, as far as I'm concerned, we got enough talent, enough here we can do our own thing. But we're all Wildcats and we're all great with trouble. I hope that will come.
How much money did we spend on Marguerite, Pleasant Unity, and Beatty, parks, and playground?
When they first joined us, all of the grants, like the one Craig is applying for now, almost all of the money we got from that went into Unity Township, developing Marguerite, Pleasant Unity, and all those little playgrounds, et cetera, out there. They never appreciated that. They never said they got any bang for their buck. I mean, it was...
For those of us that were here then, we took a bus tour when we first merged, when we first had the commission formed. We got on a school bus and we drove to all the parks in the commission area, Greater Latrobe, or Latrobe and Unity Township. And the Unity Township parks were in pretty bad shape. And then I think 2-3 years later, or maybe, I don't remember, but we did it again. And it was remarkable, the improvements that happened. To the library, I don't know, maybe you guys know this, maybe you don't, but there's about 4,500 library card holders that are residents of Unity Township. The city makes an investment, a percentage of our millage goes to maintaining the library. So our taxpayers help support the library. Unity Township taxpayers get to use the library for free. And libraries aren't allowed by law to charge. So where we have the advantage in recreation of kind of recouping some of that cost by increasing the fees and having the 3-tiered fees, we can't do that with libraries. So that hurts our library, and I think we all recognize how important libraries are. But obviously, as you've seen in the news in the last year, we're not the only municipalities having trouble with libraries. It's kind of a hot button because of the internet. Look, I look at this Unity Township thing as, look, it's a new day. We gotta put the past behind us. We have new leadership in Unity Township, and we have to start working and thinking as a greater Latrobe regional organization or group or whatever. I mean, we live in Latrobe, and I said this to Mike Abardo 100 times when he would get upset because, things were branded Latrobe as opposed to Unity. Latrobe is the city. It's got the zip code. We didn't make it up. It's the way the map is. When you're out of town, even people that live in Unity will tell you, when I'm somewhere else and they ask me where I'm from, I'm saying I'm from Latrobe, because Latrobe is recognized because of our history and because of all the things that we've had here. Latrobe people know Latrobe. If you say I'm from Unity Township or some other township, people don't know where that is. So I just think we need to try. There's a lot of hard feelings over the past with this stuff. There's new leadership there now, and I'm just optimistic that we're going to be looking at a new day of a little bit more broader thinking.
There's two things I'd really like to mention, and I'm really particularly proud of here. We talked about all the cuts that we've had over the years. We have 5 people who work for us, and if they followed their job descriptions, we would never be able to run that program there. Dawn, our receptionist, and Cindy does our business. Any event that you see, they're all there. They're all participating. They give up their Thanksgiving mornings. They give up race days. They're all there. It's a family. It's really a family there. And without all that participation, this would never happen. So I really applaud them. I do. The second thing I'd like to mention is we talk about all the drugs and things like that. We base and we train our coaches on the 40 developmental assets developed by the Search Institute in Minnesota. And these are characteristics that students and kids need to have. And the more they have, the less likely they are to get into drugs and be successful people. So they're all trained that way. We don't play to win. We play to develop students and athletes. We will stop games and teach if we have to. The kids don't sit on the bench just because they're not as developed as another student. Everyone gets equal playing time. I really feel as though we are contributing to the lives of the students here, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Thank you, Sue.
Well, I just mentioned Unity Township only because what's being done by our Latrobe entities almost at times have their hands tied behind their back. And what they produce and the excellence in which they do it and the pride in which they do it, again, Orange and Black, Latrobe, is to be commended because they've got some tremendous challenges. And if you don't think what Unity Township's pressure has put on this, you're mistaken. It's huge. So I commend what they do. And it's incredible.
So any questions for anybody or on any topic, anything that's on your mind from either side? Or the presenters or I know you had a question.
I did have a concept that I wanted to sort of go over, but Jared touched a little bit on it, and I know, we've got the incubator, so that takes some of, it is some of the answer to my question, but I was just wondering if perhaps we could talk through, let's say somebody comes to one of us with a concept, and they say, hey, we've got this idea for Latrobe, we want to do this. What is the first step in the conversation? Where do they go to get the city involved, to get the foundations involved, to get everyone involved to make that thing come to fruition, if you understand my question? So rather, and I know, Jared, we would probably come to you at this point with the incubator, but let's just take the incubator out of it. And my purpose in asking this question is for all of us to see how everybody sort of does their thing. Do you understand?
Just as a broad stroke, hopefully someone today helped solidify or clear that up for what the foundations, where their vision and missions are, and where their funding lies. So I heard from Linda and Bill and Jim, sort of an open door. The idea is their approach.
But where do they go? Like, do they go to?
Well, I think sometimes they call Ann, sometimes they call Wayne. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you would bring those up to council. that you
Council,
got-
or sometimes I've called
got
Jim
called
or Jared,
Yeah,
you know,
Depends
on
what they want to
ideas.
do.
I think Wayne is probably a key person because he can go in all directions. He can go to you, go to them, go to.
But I also think that regardless, I mean, like if I get a phone call, or if you get a phone call, or anybody on this council gets a phone call, I would be talking to, and it was an idea that I thought had some merit and something we, you know, I would go to everybody. I talked to Wayne, I talked to Ann, I talked to Jared, I talked to, you know, Jim or Linda, or you know, and say, what do you guys think about this? I mean, you know, that's what I would do, okay?
And it would depend on, if you're talking about a business.
Yeah.
But that's something we can't support.
Right.
You know, we support nonprofit organizations. So someone comes, the concept has a nonprofit, you know, slant to it, or is a nonprofit. You know, if someone came, you know, they might go to Jared, they might find Jared first, or they might find Wayne, Wayne would send Jared. And then you're on 4, I'm on 5, he's on 6. It's really easy for us to get together and talk, you know?
And as we journey closer to working together, it sort of becomes instinctual. I call, you know, decent amount, right? Because it speeds things up. Like, Ann, how do I navigate? It's like the psychology of the person.
Right.
How do I navigate this? And what do you know about this person? Not in a slanderous way, but I need to understand the barriers to engagement. What's the most effective use of resources for drafting a letter, or is this something, you know what I'm trying to say? So that speeds things up. In terms of if it's again, I think we shared some of this. If it's just a business concept, someone has an idea for a business. I personally can't write that plan. If somebody already is going to own that business and fund that business, they're going to assume the financial risk, form an LLC or an Inc. Or a sole proprietorship. Then, if they themselves have the skin in the game, then yeah, then we can probably help facilitate that. But if someone says, I think we should move these businesses in here, that wasn't what you were saying. But
No,
I'm saying
no,
a counterexample. If someone says, oh, why don't we attract these businesses? There's the invisible hand of the economy that's going to tell you what your price points are and what will survive. There's a few anomalies. Rose Style Shop is an absolute anomaly. She owns her storefront outright. She doesn't have the overhead, and she turns her inventory over constantly. She has a very niche market with high quality. That's an exception. But the economy will adjust you, right? Marco's Pizza, back-to-back years, top 10 in the country. Our economic software was showing that downtown Latrobe was ready for another pizza store or a related food industry based on credit card swipes, how far people drive, right? So we were reading the average person in Latrobe will drive 15 minutes, and if you got good pizza, boy, you'll do good. So Marco's, out of 187 franchises, is back-to-back, top 10 in the country, like from every Marco's Pizza. So there is a market for that, right? You see what I'm saying?
That blows my mind, because I could have swore we were saturated with pizza.
Well, I know, but
apparently not.
We're pierogi pizzas too. It's crazy. But Rite Aid, same thing. They're one of the top in the state. Rite Aid in Latrobe. So there's certain metrics that we can use with our RPR software that sees some of those trends. But the other time when someone says, hey, not to hit people that sell soap, but I want to sell soap and I want to move into it, I was like, have you thought about your overhead? Have you thought about your fixed costs? Literally, 60% of entrepreneurs don't even think that way. They have an idea and they're passionate about it, but that's not business, right? So we can help sanitize that and direct that. Some they might just be good for farmers market. Others will advocate like crazy to say, get a business that's a tax-paying entity into the tax base, just so you can provide services and they can pay taxes into the storefronts, you know, be on track.
So if it would become like a cultural change, though, something the foundations would want to get involved in, and that is something that would just start the conversation, and you guys would sort of pick up on based on what you're hearing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think if there's going to be a cost in the idea, a cost to the city, I would think maybe one thing would be do a quick email to your colleagues on council to be sure that at least they're okay with that. Because if they're not, it's not going to go very far. Then beyond that, then we can look to other entities to provide help or whatever. But I would say, ask that question first, is there going to be a cost to the city?
Well, for any concept, you know, whether it's a business or a nonprofit, there has to be, I mean, it's really easy for someone to have an idea and it's a nonprofit and we pay for it.
So that doesn't work. We call those crackpot schemes. There's a terminology in the foundation lingo called crackpot schemes. So it has to be built on solid foundation, good research, community support, not just one person's idea. You know, and if it really builds and has grassroots support or broad-based support, you know, we might consider helping. But we're rarely the first one in on any kind of like, keep using your word, concept. You know, we might be the intermediary or last one in.
And I think by asking those questions, that idea gets enhanced, and that's okay. That's a good thing. It'll change course. If it's a really good idea, it's going to adapt and morph.
Right.
You know, you don't see too many people coming in with that idea. It just works without collaborating with the character of the community. That's really Route 30. You see that cannibalizing of the pet stores right now. All those different pet stores came in, they come to Ranchex, and they're slowly now on super clearance, right?
Some mattress stores.
Mattress stores, that to me is an anathema. I'll take the mattress store really quick. That is the exact prototype of what we don't want here. It's a developer, I don't remember the name of the developer was, but they came in, they built this building, which heinous colors, which is hard to mess up, but somehow messed up. They put parking in the front, which is against smart growth principles. The parking should have been in the back, should have been a sidewalk and business. Then what did they do? It's death by 1,000 lanyard signs. You ever see that? It's like 60% off year round, and then they blow everywhere. There must be 30 of those. What does that do to the property values of that area? There's a master plan that is here. You may have brought it, but I have the Route 30 master plan, which is amazing. You should see it. It's stunning. It never got implemented. So what makes us unique? Also, keep doing it. There are no sidewalks on Route 30. They call for sidewalks, and you can put sidewalks on Route 30, especially with the hospital. But I tried to, they don't want to do it, but the entire free-for-all of sign blade is really not good. I wish they wouldn't do it, but you know, here again, that's one of the staples that makes us unique. It's not a free-for-all for glowing things and lanyard signs and no sidewalks. You know, we like walkers and people talking and driving 25 miles per hour versus, you know, get off track, but I don't like the mattress store. I don't think you do.
And the private sector too can step in. We have our boards to answer to, but we at times don't get involved in the politics. So we can carry ideas, we can carry maybe some funding along with that to move things along maybe more quickly than normal. The bidding process, just the bidding process, the private sector can step in and help with that. One of the, I think it was the, one of the community groups, I think a woman stood up and said, I think it'd be great to have a trail between here and St. Vincent. And I went, oh, geez, yeah. Okay, about 7 years later, here it is. Those ideas, implementation, but again, if we communicate, we can get things accomplished.
On the trail, you see St. Vincent track teams running to Latrobe and back.
Yeah, they were doing it today.
That trail will facilitate more of that, and it'll facilitate just regular students there taking a stroll down the path up to Joyo's, maybe get some pizza there, maybe finish their walk into the park and go back. Yeah, it's going to have, you know, an impact that people don't quite realize.
And so, Rosie, on that note, when Mike Abardo was still supervisor, Rosie and Mike had talked about what I call the Joyo's intersection that intersection, and trying to get PennDOT to study that, do a traffic survey, and see if there was some way to ameliorate that dangerous intersection. It would also help. The reason, I was trying to bring it to the table was if trail traffic ever has to cross Lloyd Avenue, well, I'd never suggest it, with traffic the way it is right now. And so calming traffic at that.
Yeah, we need to revisit that.
Yeah.
I know we had talked to Joe Petracca about it at one point when he was on the transportation committee too, but I think we need to revisit that.
Since I have two lawyers here, I want to get some free advice.
Remember, you
Someone else is doing it. My wife.
Aren't you feeling well, John?
Now, you know what, I keep hearing, we're 2.2 square miles, we're boxed in, no green space. Is there a vehicle for the city to purchase land, and is there a vehicle for them to annex that land into?
No to yourself.
No,
No,
you can't
okay,
annex
okay.
anymore.
No,
We
no
go back.
longer. They
We-
did that with Latrobe Steel years and years ago.
It was in the 50s, wasn't it?
1972,
Oh, was it
they
70s?
changed the constitution so we could no longer annex. Purchase? Yeah. they could apply.
Can't you vote it in or something?
It would still be in unity though.
We can't violate the Constitution.
No, but you can put limits to
Do
it.
that all the time. Why would
Well,
it
the
buy?
beauty of the Latrobe Foundation, I mean, the Latrobe Foundation could buy property right next to the city boundaries.
Right.
And while it still would be in the city, it could be used as though it were city property.
Yeah, I just thought it would be
Yeah.
neat to be able to expand, because I almost feel like I'm boxed in, like I can't do anything there.
Well, that's when Latrobe still built the rolling mill. That's why the right-hand side out there is City of Latrobe, and the left-hand side is Dairy Township.
Yeah.
Because we annexed, but that was in the 60s maybe, before the change.
But Jim, when a borough is first formed, it's formed because 60% of the residents choose to form that borough. Can you still, if a resident's on the outside of the borough,
In this area.
want to become part of the borough, doesn't that still apply?
I think it does.
Laurel
That's what I was
Mountain.
thinking.
Laurel Mountain.
That's only for the.
They formed their own borough, Laurel Mountain.
Right, but they couldn't, once formed, they couldn't annex.
No, you're right.
So we are now formed.
So the residents out there, if you had a farmer that had 100 acres.
You can make another Laurel Mountain, I mean.
No,
No,
he
he-
couldn't merge with. He couldn't become part of the borough. They couldn't become part of the borough? Okay. So now that's how the borough originally was formed.
Because
isn't it?
we exist now, so that would be an
Okay.
annexation.
Okay.
Can't do it.
It was a shot.
Well, I know up there. We'll build a wall and make the unit township, people pay for it.
There you go.
All right, I think we've had enough. Just real quick to wrap up, thank you everyone for coming, and you know, I hear all these wonderful stories, and it really makes me proud to be a Latrobian. So thank you guys for your time and your talents, and I think we've opened up a big door or window here of communication. So enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks, guys.
You sit on that.